Chapter 412. Mingxi's words made the frightened girls feel a little better. As long as they could enter the moon, it was okay to wait for a while. As long as they couldn't go in and kill the Tsar, the curse was a big deal for them. They didn't want to become a man or a monster that was neither male nor female. Everyone stood at the gate, waiting for the red light to appear again. Fengwu leaned on Mingxi's shoulder and yawned. Her big black eyes were wet. Blinking the water droplets on her eyelashes, Fengwu took out a big chicken leg and ate it. For her, the Tsar was not as important as eating. A large group of spirit bodies followed behind Fengwu. Some were talking, some were studying the bones, and some were circling around Wang Jiling and Fengwu. In the past, they couldn't see them, but now that they couldn't help but feel a little annoyed at this scene. Be careful later. There might be a trap for us in the Red Moon. Bao Bao flew to Fengwu's ear and whispered. What do you mean? Fengwu asked Bao Bao, puzzled. Are you stupid? Don't you think that Xiaoqi's appearance is very sudden? She kept saying that the Tsar had harmed all of them, but have you ever heard her curse the Tsar? If she really hated the Tsar so much, she wouldn't call him king so easily. It's good enough that she didn't curse him. Fengwu was simple but not stupid. She just didn't use her brain. Now that she followed Bao Bao's train of thought, she easily figured out some things. Then she nodded in agreement and looked at Bao Bao with admiration. Bao Bao was so amazing. Why didn't she think of it? Fengwu's starry eyes made Bao Bao feel better. He pulled Bao Bao down and continued to talk about some of his discoveries. There's one more thing. Didn't you notice that other than Xiaoqi, the other spirits were very strange? They didn't speak. They just surrounded us all the way. When we entered the palace, Xiaoqi appeared in the palace. The other spirits stood outside the palace gate. I realized that it wasn't that they didn't want to come in. It was because the palace was protected by a barrier. They couldn't come in. The other spirits couldn't enter, but why were the spirit of emperors and Xiaoqi able to? If that barrier could only block spirits that had been cursed, then Xiaoqi should also be within its range. Although she was only halfway through her transformation, there was a curse on her body. Logically speaking, she shouldn't have been able to come in. However, not only did she come in, but she was also able to talk to us for half a day. Also, if Xiaoqi really has the ability to enter the palace's barrier at any time, the other spirits shouldn't be able to bully her. After all, the other spirits can't enter the palace, and spirits don't need to eat. If she hides in there, who can bully her? But she said that she is often bullied. This is very unreasonable. The strangest thing is that what she said doesn't match what we saw in the diary. You can think back. However, those whose blood was sucked dry would have their souls scattered. They wouldn't even have a chance to be reborn. It was an extremely cruel sorcery. After absorbing the life essence, the person who performed the technique would have a chance to seize another person's body. Once the spiritual sea of the person with weak spiritual power was invaded, the person would be swallowed by the spiritual power of the person who performed the technique, and the person's body would be completely taken over. You should be extremely careful when you enter the Crimson Moon this time. That guy sealed himself and waited for 10,000 years, waiting for an outstanding person to take over. If he succeeds, I don't need to say what will happen to the person who was taken over. So the Tsar really isn't dead? Luqian asked uncertainly. In a sense, you can say that he's dead, but you can also say that he's still alive. What does that mean? Luqian asked. Once he uses this kind of heaven-defying sorcery, he'll at most be a walking corpse before he can take over. He won't have a heartbeat or breath. He won't even be able to leave the Crimson Moon. Once he leaves the place where he sealed himself, his body and spiritual power will rapidly decline. At that time, you probably won't need to kill him. His soul will scatter. Chapter 413. The words of the Emperor's spirit undoubtedly caused a layer of haze to appear in the hearts of everyone present. If they wanted to defeat the Tsar, they would face the danger of being possessed. If they did not go, then with the passage of time, there was a high possibility that they would end up like the spirits inside, becoming someone else's appearance, losing their own thoughts and consciousness, and staying in the ancient desert city forever. Whether it was being possessed or becoming someone else's appearance, it was not an outcome they wanted to see. It doesn't matter. Who cares if he will be possessed or not? We can still get out if we fight. If we don't go, we might as well die. Unexpectedly, the 7 non-mainstream people were the first to understand. Although the 7 of them were dressed a little strangely, and their thoughts were a little simple, these single-celled organisms were the first to understand at a time like this. Everyone felt as if they had been hit in the head. Yes, they had no way out. Even if they did not go, they might die. What else was there to consider? Regardless of whether they would be possessed or not, they would still have a chance of survival if they went. After thinking it through, time didn't feel so bad anymore. After an unknown amount of time, the red light in the sky reappeared. A faint red moon appeared right above the white bones, and these white bones were awakening. Everyone exchanged glances and flew toward the red moon together. At this moment, in the red moon, a rather handsome young man was sitting quietly on the throne. He seemed to have sensed something, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. Is it here? It has been 10,000 years, and this opportunity has finally come. This man was the target that Ming-Shi and the others wanted to eliminate, the king of the Sand Country, the Tsar. Entering the Crimson Moon was unexpectedly smooth. Because it was too smooth, it made people feel uneasy. When everyone stepped onto the Crimson Moon, the scene they saw shocked everyone. It was actually an ancient desert city, which was exactly the same as the city below. The city was exactly the same, and the streets were exactly the same. Even the location and appearance of the palace were exactly the same. The Tsar must be in the palace. This answer appeared in everyone's heart. Everyone held their weapons tightly. The opponent they were about to face was a peerless expert from 10,000 years ago. If they didn't win this battle, then all of them would die here. Ming-Shi and the others walked step by step towards the palace in the center of the ancient desert city. When they reached the palace gate slowly opened by itself. Ha 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 ha, after 10,000 years, someone has finally come. This king can finally see the light of day again. When Ming-Shi and the others walked into the hall, they were greeted by the Tsar's excited laughter. The Sand Emperor had been waiting for this opportunity for 10,000 years. Back then, if it wasn't because the sea god had dragged his sand country into the divine mausoleum, he would have found a new body and been reborn perfectly. He didn't need to seal himself in this Crimson Moon and absorb the baleful aura to nourish his soul and spiritual power, in order to preserve his soul and spiritual power. Fengwu frowned as she looked at the dense baleful aura around her. It turned out that the reason why she couldn't find any baleful aura outside was because all the baleful aura was concentrated in one place. That was why she couldn't see any other places. Sand Emperor Dai. Zicheng held the magic staff in his hand and looked at the Sand Emperor with a serious face. You want to kill this king with just the likes of you? Little things who overestimate themselves. The Sand Emperor sneered and looked at Zicheng and the others with disdain. He was the ancient Sand Emperor who was half human and half demon. His strength was so strong that he was half a step away from having the power of a real demon. Of course, it was impossible for him to put Fengwu and the others in his eyes. Everyone, let's attack together. Caesar shouted and took the lead to attack with his magic staff. Zicheng followed closely behind, and a great battle broke out just like that. At this time, outside the hall, the spirit of the emperor and the other undead didn't follow Fengwu. They quietly looked at the big battle in the hall with a serious expression, but there was also an incomprehensible look on their faces. Your Highness, are we really not going to go in and help Xiao Wu and the others? A spiritual body wearing a general's armor stood respectfully beside the spirit of the emperor. We have more important things to do. The spirit of the emperor took a deep breath and his eyes darkened. What is it? The other spiritual bodies were also very curious. They all looked at their omnipotent king and asked for an answer. Find something and destroy it. What is it? The blood sacrifice reincarnation technique. The blood sacrifice reincarnation technique. Shouldn't that thing be with the Sand Emperor? The spiritual bodies asked in confusion. No, it's somewhere else. Fengwu didn't know about these conversations, but she knew what the spirit of the emperor wanted to do. The spirit of the emperor was worried that if the blood sacrifice reincarnation technique was remembered by the people present and spread it, then the consequences would be unimaginable. In order to prevent this evil technique from appearing in the world again, the spirit of the emperor decided to find this blood sacrifice reincarnation technique and then destroy it. Except for Fengwu, the others didn't know what the spirit of the emperor wanted to do. They were not in the mood to think about the blood sacrifice reincarnation technique now. Everyone's spirit was highly concentrated. They were bent on killing the Sand Emperor and leaving this so-called Sand Country. The Sand Emperor was worthy of being a peerless expert 10,000 years ago. Everyone together couldn't do anything to him. He and Mingxi and the others obviously didn't use their full strength. It was as if they were playing with children. The gap in strength made people feel desperate. It was hard to imagine how strong the experts from 10,000 years ago were. The long sword in Mingxi's hand emitted a dazzling golden light, and a golden sword light attacked the Sand Emperor. The Sand Emperor's expression didn't change. He didn't even leave his throne. With a gentle wave of his hand, he dealt with Mingxi's attack. Boy, you are the strongest among all of us. The bloodline in your body seems to be very good. Your body is mine. The Sand Emperor looked at Mingxi as if he was admiring a peerless treasure. No matter how he looked at it, it was so perfect that he wanted to monopolize it. No one knew that the Sand Emperor had actually chosen Mingxi from 4 candidates. These 4 candidates were Mingxi, Fengwu, Zicheng, and Kaiser. The 4 of them were undoubtedly the most talented among all of them. Mingxi's appearance and talent, as well as his extraordinary bloodline, made the Sand Emperor very satisfied. Fengwu's physique was pure and flawless. Her body had a natural aura that made people feel very comfortable. The Sand Emperor could see that Fengwu had the talent to become a nature magician. A nature magician could control all things in nature. This kind of physique and talent was rare even in ancient times. In ancient times, every time a nature magician was born, they would definitely be worshipped by their country or tribe. They would also be directly designated as the saintess or son of a country. From this, one could see the status of a nature magician. Chapter 414. In ancient times, every time a nature mage was born, they would definitely be worshipped by their own country or tribe, or directly designated as a country's holy maiden or holy son. From this, one could see the status of a nature mage. As for Zicheng and Caesar, both of them were extremely talented people. However, what the Tsar liked about them was not their talent, but their luck. These 2 people were shrouded in great luck. They were the children of luck of this era. The children of luck were born with a mission. Some of them were born to save the world, and some were born to destroy the world. Whether the 2 of them were born to save the world or to destroy the world, the children of luck were protected by the world's luck. They may encounter dangers, but before their mission was completed, no one could kill them. If they touched the 2 of them, they would be cursed by the world's consciousness. The curse of the world's consciousness was not something the Tsar could resist. Because of this, Zicheng and Caesar were lucky enough to be removed from the Tsar's list of candidates. The remaining 2 candidates were Fengwu and Mingxi. Fengwu's talent as a nature mage moved the Tsar, but she was a woman, so the Tsar could only reluctantly give up on her and choose Mingxi as the target for possession. As a result, Mingxi managed to emerge victorious from the 4 selections. His luck was truly intoxicating. A red chain flew out from the Tsar's hand, but in the blink of an eye, Mingxi was bound by this red chain, and he couldn't use any ability. Because the Tsar's movement was too fast, Mingxi didn't even have time to escape, and he was already in danger. Senior Mingxi. Zicheng was shocked, and immediately attacked the chain with metal magic, trying to cut it open. Unfortunately, the magic had no effect at all. Mingxi was still bound in place. Fengwu frowned worriedly. She called in her heart, and Xiaoqin flew out from Fengwu's body, and in the blink of an eye, flew towards Mingxi. With a slash of the sword, the originally motionless red chain became thinner. The evil aura on the chain decreased by more than half. Lu Chun and the others were stunned. They didn't expect Fengwu to have such strength. Everyone saw Zicheng's strength just now, but they didn't expect Fengwu's strength to be much stronger than Zicheng's. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the chain to change. As soon as the pure sword appeared, the Tsar immediately felt a kind of panic, as if a natural enemy had appeared, making him want to escape immediately. The Tsar was the Tsar. He quickly calmed down. and his eyes flashed as he looked at the pure sword, and suddenly turned into a stream of light and rushed into Ming-Shi's sea of consciousness. Ah! Everyone was shocked. They could tell that the Tsar had chosen Ming-Shi to possess his body. No, everyone, quickly kill him. If the Tsar succeeds, we will all die. Among the last few people to join in, someone shouted. The middle-aged man, who was obviously the leader of the group, also looked uncertain. He wasn't sure if he should take advantage of this moment to kill Ming-Shi and kill the Tsar. Everyone do it. Without waiting for the middle-aged man to make a decision, the other people with him had already started to attack. They raised their weapons, and used their sword qi and magic to attack Ming-Shi. At this time, whether it was Zicheng, Fengwu, or the 7 non-mainstream people, their reaction was very consistent. They surrounded Ming-Shi to protect him, not letting the middle-aged man and the others hurt Ming-Shi. Their attacks were all blocked. At this time, Ming-Shi's face began to turn green and white. At a glance, they knew that he was fighting for his body. Get out of the way. Let's kill the Tsar together while he's trying to possess the Tsar's body. This way, the Tsar will be eliminated immediately, and everyone will be able to go out. Why not? A young man said eagerly. He didn't understand why they didn't let him do the good thing. As long as he died, everyone would be able to survive. Obviously, the people who attacked with the young man had the same idea. Everyone stared at Fengwu and the others with dissatisfaction. They felt that they wanted to drag all of them to death for one person. Since you don't get out of the way, don't blame us for not showing mercy. The middle-aged man seemed to have made up his mind. When he looked at Ming-Shi, there was a trace of reluctance on his face, but soon his face became firm. He wanted to leave here. He must go out alive. No one can stop him. How could this group of people understand the despair they felt when they saw the people around them disappear day by day? And they couldn't find the reason. They didn't understand anything. No. Fengwu pursed her lips and looked at them seriously. We won't get out of the way. You can't hurt Ming-Shi. Zicheng looked at the middle-aged man and the group of people with a righteous expression and said firmly, What's wrong with you guys? Ming-Shi can definitely survive. You can't hurt him. Mei Irene and Eileen also stood in front of Ming-Shi with firm faces. The two of them had a good impression of Ming-Shi. Of course, they didn't want anyone to hurt Ming-Shi. While the two sides were in a stalemate, Ming-Shi's spirit sea was in a great battle. The Tsar's consciousness was extremely powerful, chasing Ming-Shi to the point where he could only dodge. He had no power to fight back. The Tsar's consciousness had existed for tens of thousands of years, and for 10,000 years his spirit and consciousness had been nourished by an endless amount of evil spirit. This evil spirit had allowed his spirit and consciousness to grow to a terrifying level. It was not something that a young man like Ming-Shi, who was born less than 20 years old, could compare to. Boy, there's no need to run, it's useless, just obediently merge with this king, and in the future, you and this king will have eternal life together, isn't that good? The Tsar's cold and proud voice sounded in Ming-Shi's ears. Ming-Shi continued to run in his spirit sea without looking back. His face was ashen. This was the first time in his life that he had been in such a difficult situation. Sure enough, the Tsar was an old monster who had lived for tens of thousands of years. He was too strong. I will never let you devour me. Ming-Shi's voice was not afraid, although he was running in front. There was no trace of embarrassment or despair in his voice. That's not up to you. The Tsar smiled confidently. His speed suddenly doubled, and he rushed in front of Ming-Shi. Come merge with this king. In the future, you will be me, and I will be you. We will have eternal life together. The Tsar's voice was full of endless temptation and magic. At this time, Ming-Shi had nowhere to run. He could only watch as the Tsar pounced on him. Fengwu blocked the sword in the middle-aged man's hand. The middle-aged man was shocked. Although he knew that Fengwu's strength was not weak, he never thought that she would be so powerful that he, a half-step sword great master, could not gain any advantage in front of her. If word of this spread out, perhaps no one would believe it. Chapter 4:15. Fengwu blocked the sword in the middle-aged man's hand. The middle-aged man was shocked. Although he knew that Fengwu's strength was not weak, he never thought that she would be so powerful. He, a half-step sword grandmaster, was actually unable to gain any advantage in her hands. If word of this spread out, no one would dare to believe it. Get out of the way. When the Sand Empress succeeds, all of us will die. The middle-aged man said angrily. He felt that Mingxi's aura was becoming more and more chaotic. He was afraid that the Sand Empress had already begun to take over his body. If the Sand Empress succeeded in taking over his body, would they still have a chance to live? No, Senior Mingxi will be fine. The Sand Empress won't be able to take over his body. Fengwu was very confident in Mingxi. Unfortunately, no one else had this confidence. Even Zicheng did not dare to say that he believed that Mingxi would be able to get through this. Zicheng would protect Mingxi because everyone knew that the two of them were students of the same school, and Mingxi was her senior. She had to protect him. If she did not protect Mingxi today, her popularity would definitely be affected when she returned to school. Without her popularity, how could she increase her favorability? Therefore, she had to stand on Mingxi's side. Her image could not be destroyed. At the very least, she could not take the initiative to make a move before she was sure that Mingxi had really been taken over. As for Caesar, it was completely because Mingxi and Zicheng were students of the same school. Moreover, he was Zicheng's senior. There was no other reason why he protected her. Fengwu did not care why others protected Mingxi. Right now, she only wanted to protect Mingxi and not let anyone hurt him. This middle-aged man wanted to hurt Mingxi, so how could Fengwu retreat? You are being too soft-hearted. Once the Tsar succeeds in seizing the body, I think you will have nowhere to cry. The middle-aged man was so angry that he almost exploded. This lady wouldn't listen to anything he said to her. She kept saying that Senior Mingxi would be fine, and that no one could possess Senior Mingxi. He really didn't know where she got her confidence from. The other party is the Tsar who has lived for 10,000 years. Do you think he is just a passerby on the street? Senior Mingxi will be fine. This sentence again, the middle-aged man felt that he was already speechless. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't take down Fengwu, he would have already rushed over and finished off Mingxi with his sword. The middle-aged man wanted to rush over, but there were only a few people on their side. Most of them chose to protect the beautiful young man named Mingxi. The few of them couldn't fight their way through, so they could only watch helplessly. Because there were only a few people, the middle-aged man had to fight and reason at the same time. He hoped that Fengwu and the others could turn back as soon as possible. Unfortunately, this lady was determined to protect Mingxi. The middle-aged man's saliva was almost dry, but it was useless. After a few more moves, Mingxi, who was in the middle of the crowd, suddenly opened his eyes. When his eyes opened, a golden light flashed, looking beautiful and strange. Luchen wanted to pull Fengwu away. At this time, he didn't know whether Mingxi had been possessed by the Tsar or not. Fengwu looked a little silly. He didn't want Fengwu to be careless and die in the hands of the Tsar. Unfortunately, Fengwu didn't understand Luchen's good intentions. She shook off Luchen's hand that was pulling her sleeve, and then rushed forward into Mingxi's arms. Senior Mingxi. Fengwu hugged Mingxi tightly. Just now she was worried sick, and her heart was in a mess. The moment Mingxi woke up, her heart finally settled down. I told you he would be fine. Baby's voice suddenly came into Fengwu's ears. She knew that Baby was communicating with her mind. Fengwu didn't have time to care about Baby now. All her attention was attracted by Mingxi. I made you worry. I'm fine. Mingxi touched Fengwu's little head and said gently, Are you really Mingxi? The middle-aged man raised his long sword and asked without relaxing. The others were not sure if he was really Mingxi, and they all stepped back at least 3 meters. There was a strange vacuum around Mingxi. Mingxi smiled helplessly. I'm really Mingxi. I haven't been possessed. How is that possible? The Tsar clearly entered your spirit sea. Do you think we will believe that he didn't possess you? The young man said with a look of disbelief. It wasn't just the middle-aged man and the others who couldn't believe it. Even the people who chose to protect Ming, she couldn't believe that he could escape from the Tsar. Who was the Tsar? He was the strongest person who unified the desert 10,000 years ago. They didn't even dare to think about how strong the spiritual power of such a person was. How could he possibly fail to possess someone? The answer was, of course, impossible. So when Mingxi said that he hadn't been possessed, everyone was doubtful. Instead of believing that Mingxi hadn't been possessed by the Tsar, They would rather believe that Mingxi had been possessed. Now this was the Tsar. Maybe because the Tsar had just succeeded in possessing Mingxi, his strength had been greatly reduced, so he wanted to pretend to be Mingxi to escape a fierce battle. Yes, that must be it. Mingxi still didn't know what everyone was thinking, otherwise, he would definitely be dumbfounded. He was almost possessed, but the Tsar missed one point. He was not an ordinary human being, and there was divine blood flowing in his body. With the protection of divine blood, how could he be successfully possessed by a half-human, half-demon? In order not to let the Tsar discover the abnormality in his spirit sea, he had been pretending to escape, so that the Tsar could possess him. As long as he possessed the Tsar, the protective power in his blood would be activated, and the Tsar's consciousness would be torn apart in an instant. Ever since the Tsar entered Mingxi's spirit sea, Mingxi had been scheming against the Tsar. The Tsar was destroyed by Mingxi's bloodline power in the end, and the Tsar's power in his spirit sea was absorbed by Mingxi. Mingxi's strength had now reached a new level. When he completely absorbed the Tsar's power, he would be even stronger than now, but no one knew how much stronger he would be. Mingxi's divine blood could never be told to outsiders. Only Fengwu knew about it. Even Fengwu knew about it because Bao Bao saw that Fengwu was worried, so he told her. Mingxi didn't say it himself. My spirit sea is a bit special, so the Tsar couldn't possess me, Mingxi said. Do you think I'll believe you? The young man still didn't believe it. Zicheng also had some hesitation in her heart. It wasn't until she asked the system and learned that Mingxi was indeed not possessed that she was relieved. In addition to collecting favorability points to exchange for things, the system rarely helped her. If she wanted to know something, she had to use favorability points to exchange for it. It was really rare for the system to tell her the answer so readily like this time. Chapter 416. Everyone looked at Mingxi doubtfully. They were not sure if the person standing in front of them was Mingxi himself, or the Tsar who had successfully taken over his body. Fortunately, at this moment, the spirit of the emperor appeared. The spirit of the emperor proved that Mingxi had not been taken over. Only then did Zicheng and the others heave a sigh of relief. Speaking of which, since the Tsar is already dead, does that mean that the curse has also disappeared? Luchen asked after thinking for a while. The curse was placed by the Tsar. Now that the Tsar is dead, the curse has naturally disappeared, the spirit of the emperor said with certainty. The spirit of the emperor also sighed at the Tsar's death. Originally, his purpose of following Fengwu was to rescue the souls of the other emperors who were trapped. He did not expect that the ending would turn out like this. How could he not sigh? In the ancient desert city under the crimson moon, the moment the Tsar's consciousness disappeared, all the spirits seemed to hear the sound of the shackles being removed. The spirits who looked exactly the same began to change. They finally returned to their original appearances. All of them were so excited that they could not stop crying. We've changed back. We've finally changed back. The Tsar is finally dead. We're free. We've waited for this day for so long. We've waited for this day for so long. Ah! Boo-hoo! These spirits were so excited that they cried and howled. They felt unprecedentedly relaxed. The curse that had been entangling them all this time had disappeared at this moment. All of their souls had been reborn. The spirits bowed to Fengwu and the others on the crimson moon to express their gratitude. Then, all of them turned into streams of light and disappeared from this world. The curse that had been troubling them had disappeared. They could now reincarnate. No one wanted to stay in this ancient desert city that had brought them endless painful memories. The thing that had been binding their souls all this time was not the sea god, but the Tsar's consciousness. The various methods that the sea god had used against the Tsar had already been resolved by the Tsar. Therefore, as long as the curse was removed, these people of the Sand Country could leave. There was nothing that could bind them anymore. Among these spirits, the girl called Xiaoqi had also returned to her original appearance. If the middle-aged man and the others were here, they would definitely realize that Xiaoqi was actually one of the people who had gone missing at the beginning of their group. Other than Xiaoqi, the other missing people were also in this place. They had all changed their original appearances. Let's go too. We'll leave this place and reincarnate. There was a young man standing next to Xiaoqi. Like Xiaoqi, this man was with the middle-aged man. I wonder how they are doing, Xiaoqi muttered to herself. They were the first to arrive at the ancient desert city, but they were unlucky and died at the hands of these spirits. They didn't even know how they died. They only knew that they were already dead when they opened their eyes. The world they saw after death was completely different from when they were alive. They had the same soul and the same face. The death world of the dead was so scary, but the scariest thing was yet to come. Xiaoqi was chosen by the Tsar, and he asked her to find a way to lure Mingxi and the others into the Crimson Moon. The Tsar had promised them that if she could do it, he would let them go and restore their original faces. They had been turned into monsters by the Tsar, and were on the verge of a mental breakdown. The Tsar's promise seemed to be their only life-saving straw. Although Xiaoqi felt sorry for Mingxi and the others, she still did it. When Mingxi and the others entered the Crimson Moon, she regretted it, but it was already too late. The Crimson Moon was not a place where ordinary undead could go. She couldn't stop them at all. She could only watch them fall into the Tsar's trap. Fortunately, nothing happened to everyone in the end, so the guilt in her heart lessened a little. They'll be fine. An old man sighed. The old man was also one of the adventurers who entered the tomb of the god of sin this time. When he came in, he was ready to never get out. He didn't expect that in the end he would die here. The only thing to be thankful for now was that they didn't have to be the Tsar's slaves and be sealed in this place forever. To be able to get a chance to reincarnate was already a very good result for them. Everyone looked at the Crimson Moon with complicated eyes. Finally, they turned into a ray of light and flew into the sky. Fengwu and the others didn't know any of this. Because the Tsar was dead, the palace had become ownerless. The middle-aged man and the others began to rummage through the palace for useful treasures. Although they found some good magic tools, the real valuable things had already been put away by the spirit of the emperor. The most valuable thing in the entire palace was the blood sacrifice reincarnation technique. Zicheng was very interested in this evil technique. She didn't want to practice this evil technique herself, but wanted to sell it to the system store in exchange for points. This kind of rare technique could be exchanged for considerable points. Naturally, she didn't want to let it go. It was a pity that they couldn't find the blood sacrifice reincarnation technique in the entire palace. Zicheng suspected that the blood sacrifice reincarnation technique might not have been recorded, but it had always been in the Tsar's mind. Since Mingxi had defeated the Tsar's consciousness, it meant that the blood sacrifice reincarnation technique had already fallen into Mingxi's hands. Zicheng was a little disappointed. Since it had fallen into Mingxi's hands, it was impossible for her to get it. Even if she asked Mingxi about this evil technique, he wouldn't tell her. Fengwu took advantage of the time when everyone went to search for treasures in the palace to let Xiaoqin purify the evil aura in the Crimson Moon. When Xiaoqin heard that there was something to eat, he immediately flew out to purify the evil aura. The moment Xiaoqin started to purify, the buildings in the Crimson Moon started to collapse. The ground seemed to have been cut open and split into pieces. At this moment, a black teleportation point appeared in front of everyone. Everyone immediately flew into the teleportation point. Xiaoqin returned to Fengwu's dantian. Mingxi held Fengwu's hand, and the two of them jumped into the teleportation point together. Following the disappearance of the Crimson Moon, the entire Sand Country was forever sealed. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, Mingxi and the others had been in the sea god's tomb for more than 10 days. In these 10 days, no one had returned. Ajur, Riot, and Mo Gui obediently stayed on the ship. Every day, they would either play with Xiao Yi or sit at the back of the ship to fish. Life was monotonous, but they couldn't leave. It couldn't be more miserable. There were many people who were just like them. Many ships in the nearby sea were waiting for their people to return. What Ajur didn't expect was that before Mingxi and the others arrived, Mildy, O'Brien, and Feng Yanran had already arrived. In order to save O'Brien, Mildy had left by herself on a ship. She didn't care about the trouble she would cause Mingxi and the others. Chapter 417. Mildy's luck was not bad. She drove the boat to look for her fiancé, and finally found O'Brien, who was washed to the deserted island by the current a few days ago. After spending some time with Feng Yanran, O'Brien had completely fallen in love with Feng Yanran, this kind and weak girl. The two of them were lucky. On the deserted island, they actually found the old residence of an ancient magician. In that place, the two of them obtained a lot of precious magic books and magic weapons that did not exist in this era. O'Brien gave most of the good things to Feng Yanran, but he only kept the part that he needed. When Mildy found them, the two of them naturally did not say anything, and Mildy also did not know that her fiancé was hiding these things from her. O'Brien was not moved at all by Mildy's behavior of coming to him. His heart was now completely occupied by Feng Yanran. How could he be moved by a fiancé that he did not have the slightest good impression of? After Mildy found O'Brien, she sensitively noticed that he did not want Feng Yanran. Mildy regarded O'Brien as the whole meaning of life, and her attitude toward Feng Yanran, who took away O'Brien's heart, became worse. When the three of them appeared in front of a juror, the relationship between the three of them was already like fire and water. Can you two stop quarreling? It's so late at night, and you don't want others to sleep. A juror hugged Little Bun, who had been yawning all the time, and his whole person was crazy. Since the three of them came back, he could hear the sound of quarreling almost every day, and it was simply annoying. If it were not for the fact that they were all students of the same school, and now they were in the same team, he would have already thrown a fireball, and directly burned that annoying guy to ashes. Woo. I'm sorry, Ajur, I'm sorry, woo-woo. Feng Yanran's eyes were red, and she cried delicately. She really felt that she was wronged. She never had any thoughts about O'Brien. O'Brien was very outstanding, but not enough for her to like him. O'Brien always showed good intentions to her, but she always vaguely rejected him. She did not expect that Mildy would always find trouble with her. Feng Yanran really felt wronged. She didn't do anything wrong. Why was she treated like this? Feng Yanran, who grew up being spoiled like a little princess wherever she went, could not adapt to this kind of life where people made things difficult for her everywhere. The more she thought about it, the more wronged she felt. Don't cry, can you two please stop? Ever since the three of you came back, we haven't even had a good night's sleep. Just what do you want? Mo Gui walked out with a robe draped over his shoulders and grabbed his hair. Sigh. Right side. He felt powerless in the face of such a noisy situation. Mildy, if you have anything to do with me, why do you have to find trouble with Yanran? Yanran is so kind. How can you bear to hurt her like this? You are indeed a vicious woman. When I go back this time, I will definitely report to my family and annul the engagement with you. O'Brien looked at Feng Yanran with a distressed expression. He couldn't stand the woman he loved being repeatedly troubled by a woman like Mildy in front of him. When he went back this time, he would annul the engagement with Mildy and then be with Yanran. Feng Yanran stood at the side and cried. The more she thought about it, the more wronged she felt. Annul the engagement with me? Do you think that's possible? This engagement was decided by our two families. It's not something you can annul just because you want to. Do you want to give up the position of the family's heir for her? Mildy smiled coldly. She felt a chill in her heart. Since the two of them got engaged, she had done her best to help him get more power in the family, and let him have his current position in the family. It could be said that if it wasn't for the engagement with her, no matter how talented O'Brien was, he was doomed to be buried. Their family would not have been able to get to where they were today with the help of her family's power. She didn't expect that for a woman, he would ignore all that she had done for him, and even say that he wanted to annul the engagement. What kind of person did he think she was? Want to annul the engagement? Dream on. She, Mildy, was not the kind of woman who could be easily dismissed by him. I'll give up. For Yanran. What can I let go? O'Brien looked like a saint, and said that he was willing to give up everything for Feng Yanran without any hesitation. He was willing to do this for Feng Yanran. Mildy's face turned pale. She didn't expect that this man would be so heartless to her. Go back to your rooms and sleep. You can't say anything in vain. If you dare to be so noisy again, believe it or not, I will throw you off the ship. Ajur didn't have the time to listen to the love and hate between the three of them. He just wanted to sleep now. Even Xiaoye's little head was nodding and he looked sleepy. After warning the three of them, Ajur took the little bun back to his room to rest. Mildy and the other two didn't make any more noise. Ajur and the others finally had a good sleep. After a good night's sleep, Ajur climbed out of bed energetically. After freshening up, he took Xiaoyi out to make breakfast. But he didn't expect to hear a terrified scream before he even entered the cabin for breakfast. What now? Ajur felt impatient, but he still grabbed the small bag and snatched it away. Who would have thought that when he walked to the deck, he would see Milty lying in a pool of blood while O'Brien was holding a magic staff. There were still remnants of energy waves coming from the magic staff. It was obvious what had happened. Heavens! Will you die if you don't cause trouble? Mo Gue and Riot also rushed over at this time. When they saw this scene, Mo Gue couldn't help but curse their ancestors in his heart. After a round of emergency treatment, they finally managed to save Mildy. However, due to her severe injuries, she had been unconscious ever since. O'Brien also knew that he had gotten into big trouble this time. His face was very pale, but he still firmly guarded Feng Yanran, who was crying until she was about to die. He didn't leave her side. If there's anything, come at me. Don't hurt Yanran. O'Brien looked at Ajur and the others with a tense expression, as if they were some unreasonable bad guys who bullied his sweetheart. Ajur really wanted to split open this guy's head to see if there was grass growing in it. He handed the little bun to Little White, and let Little White carry him to eat breakfast. Ajur himself, Mo Gue, and Riot asked about what had happened. O'Brien didn't say anything. He just took the blame and kept saying that it had nothing to do with Feng Yanran. In the end, it was Feng Yanran who explained the matter in tears. Only then did they know what had happened. Chapter 418. In Feng Yanran's cries, Ajur and the other two finally knew what had happened. This morning, Feng Yanran got up very early. After she got up, she wanted to go to the kitchen to make breakfast for everyone. She didn't expect to meet Mildy, who also got up early. Needless to say, when the two met, they quarreled again. Feng Yanran didn't quarrel with Mildy. She tried very hard to tell Mildy that she didn't have any romantic feelings for O'Brien and would never intervene between them. Unfortunately, Mildy didn't believe her, and the quarrel became more and more intense. While quarreling, Mildy used her hand and was about to slap Feng Yanran's face. At this time, O'Brien, who was attracted by the quarrel, saw that his sweetheart was about to be slapped. How could he bear it? He directly used magic to mercilessly hit Mildy's back. At that time, O'Brien only saw that Feng Yanran was bullied and lost his mind for a moment. He didn't show any mercy until he saw that Mildy was seriously injured and lying on the ground. Only then did he know that he had made a big mistake. Not to mention that if Mildy died in his hands, her family would not let him go. Just the school alone would not accept him. The students of Notre Dame du Starlight were not allowed to hurt each other. He had seriously injured a classmate, so he would definitely be severely punished. Maybe he would even face the danger of being expelled. After calming down, O'Brien prayed in his heart that Mildy must be alive no matter how much he didn't like her. As long as she was alive, he would be fine. O'Brien knew how much Mildy loved him. He knew that as long as Mildy was alive, she would never let him be embarrassed by her family and be expelled from the school. As one of the main characters of this incident, Feng Yanran was also scared to death. She didn't think that O'Brien would hurt Mildy so much. If Mildy died and the news spread to the school, she could imagine what her reputation would be like. Feng Yanran also complained about O'Brien in her heart. She didn't want her hard-earned good reputation to be ruined because of this kind of gossip. Alright, you two can leave first. O'Brien, you can discuss your matters after Mildy wakes up. Ajur was very disdainful of O'Brien. For the sake of a woman he had just met, he had attacked his fiancée, who had helped him a lot. He had no good impression of such an ungrateful man. Riot and Mo Gue felt the same way. The three of them chased Feng Yanran and O'Brien out before trying to find a way to treat Mildy's injuries with life potions. Fortunately, the potions in their hands were of high quality, and Mildy managed to keep her life. After Mildy woke up, O'Brien went to look for her alone. No one knew what they talked about, but in the end, Mildy expressed that she would not pursue the matter of O'Brien hurting her. After Mildy expressed that she would not pursue the matter, O'Brien was relieved. He did not even look at Mildy and chased after Feng Yanran every day. This time, Mildy did not look for Feng Yanran to make a scene. She was very calm. Seeing that Mildy did not look for trouble, both Feng Yanran and O'Brien breathed a sigh of relief. However, Ajur felt that Mildy's attitude was very strange. He had a feeling that something big was going to happen. However, Ajur did not intend to interfere. In any case, this was a matter between the three of them. It had nothing to do with an outsider like him. As long as they did not disturb the others, they could do whatever they wanted. He did not care. At times like this, Ajur missed Mingxi very much. With Mingxi around, he didn't have to worry about these things. Since Riot and O'Brien were in the same grade, his words didn't seem to have any effect in front of O'Brien and Mildy, so it was even more impossible for him, a junior in the first grade, to interfere with the matters of the second grade. Senior Mingxi, Xiaowu, the two of you should come back quickly. Watching others act out a sadomasochistic love triangle in front of you all day long, don't feel too sour. Mingxi and Fengwu, who were being talked about by Ajur, were teleported into one emperor's tomb after another. Fengwu's luck was not bad. Later, when she encountered a few emperors' tombs, she was able to successfully save the emperor's soul. She also saved the people who died in the tomb. In the past few days, she had sent many souls to reincarnate. She did not encounter a more dangerous dungeon like the Sand Emperor's tomb. Of course, those emperors' tombs were not good places. It was just that it was easier to clear them. Fengwu felt relaxed because she had Pure Sword, the emperor's spirit, and other spirits by her side. The others were not so lucky. Every time they fell into a new map, it was a fight to the death. In the emperor's tomb, there were either zombies or traps. If they were not careful and accidentally killed by the zombies, they would die in these traps. Fengwu did not know how many souls she had sent away. One day, when she was teleported again, she was actually teleported into a palace made of crystal. The blue crystal palace had a watery luster and a trace of mystery. It was very beautiful and dazzling. The crystal palace was located on a beautiful island. Outside the island was blue sea water. On the island, there were many mysterious plants that had never been seen in the outside world. This place was not just any other place. It was the real tomb of the sea god. Those who survived until the end were all teleported here. Everyone looked at each other with a hint of wariness in their eyes. The most precious thing in the sea god's tomb was undoubtedly the divine weapon used by the sea god. The other thing was the sea god's divinity. Humans with excellent talent could condense divinity on their own. However, most people did not have such high talent. If these people wanted to become gods, there was only one way, and that was to find a way to obtain a divinity. As long as they fused with the divinity, they could truly become gods. However, fusing with the divinity required a long time. It was not something that could be done in a day or two. Many people came for the sea god's divinity. The sea god's divinity was the divinity of a teacher. This kind of divinity was much stronger than the divinity of an acquired god. If they could successfully fuse with it, not only could they become gods, they could also become the new sea god. From then on, they could step onto the peak of life. Those who had survived to the end all knew that there were no weaklings who had reached the end. Now everyone was an opponent, and even friends who had a good relationship with them couldn't completely trust them. The temptation of divine deity and divine artifact was too great. It wasn't something that ordinary people could resist. Fengwu. That's great. You're still alive. Shouzo brought Yuan and the butler to Fengwu. Shouzo's face was still filled with a surprised smile. Shouzo had always been worried about Fengwu, a friend who had taken care of him. Fortunately, the people he cared about were all fine. Elisa was fine, Fengwu was fine, Yuan and the housekeeper were also alive and well. As for his brother Caesar, he believed that with his brother's ability and luck, it would be impossible for anything to happen to him. He was most at ease with his brother. Chapter 419. Fengwu raised her head when she heard the voice. She did not expect to meet Caesar, who she had been separated from for a long time. Fengwu was about to say something when she realized that someone was waving at her from not far away. The people waving at her were Margaret and her sister. The siblings were fine and seemed to be in good spirits. It seemed like they had not suffered much. Mingxi walked over at this moment. When she left the Sand Country, she had been separated from Mingxi. After that, they did not meet again in the few teleportations. Finally meeting Mingxi, Fengwu's eyes lit up. Her lips curled up as she waved at Mingxi. Zicheng and Irene, the original female lead and supporting female lead, were naturally fine. Both of them had gold fingers. Although the journey was very dangerous, the two of them did not suffer any injuries. Elisa's luck was also very good. Every time she was teleported, she would be sent to someone she knew. She would be sent to Caesar's side or Irene's side. There were even a few times when she was teleported to her own servant. However, she only met Shozo once. Shozo and the butler were teleported together, and Elisa was also teleported to the same tomb. This was also the only time the two of them met in a tomb. After that, they did not meet again. However, there were so many emperors' tombs in this tomb of the gods. It was very normal for the two of them not to meet again. Not everyone was like Zicheng and Caesar, who were blessed by the god of fate. At least 3 out of 5 times, they would be teleported together. Eve and Rika were also very lucky to survive. The two of them were also very lucky. Every time they fell into an emperor's tomb, there would be many powerhouses. With powerhouses at the front, the two of them did not suffer any injuries. They just followed along and gained experience until the end. When they entered the tomb of the gods, tens of thousands of people rushed in together. However, only 200 to 300 people made it to the end. It was only because Fengwu had cleared the murderous aura in the tomb that so many people had managed to survive. If they hadn't met Fengwu, other than those who were extremely powerful or had cheats, the others wouldn't even have had the chance to survive. This island was very big, and the palaces on the island were exceptionally dazzling under the sunlight, emitting rays of holy light. Everyone looked enviously at the glittering crystal palace under the sunlight. They couldn't wait to rush in and search for the treasures. At the same time, most people did the same. Hadn't they been waiting for this moment after going through so many hardships? Now that the treasure was right in front of him, if he didn't take it now, when would he? The crystal palace was decorated magnificently. In the middle of the palace was a huge crystal throne. On the throne sat a man who was twice as tall as a person. The man's face was rough, and his face exuded an aura of authority. Even though he wasn't breathing or having a heartbeat, just looking at him made people want to kneel down and kowtow to him. It was as if he was a high and mighty god, and they didn't even have the qualifications to look at him directly. There was no need to explain the identity of this man. 2 words appeared in everyone's mind at the same time. Sea God. This man was the master of the tomb of the gods, the sea god. Mortals couldn't look directly at the face of a god. They only had to look at him once. And they had the illusion that they were about to explode and die. Fengwu and the others carefully looked away, avoiding looking directly at the face of the sea god. They sized up the sea god, this innate god, once again. He wore a crown made of gold and gems on his head as he sat on the throne. The clothes on the sea god's body were very extraordinary. They couldn't tell what material it was made of, but they understood that it was definitely not a material that could be obtained in the human world. There were all kinds of magic tools on his clothes. He wore more than a dozen necklaces around his neck, and each one was different. There were more than a dozen bracelets on each hand. From buttons to brooches to belts and accessories. Almost half of the sea god's body was hung on his clothes. If it wasn't inconvenient to wear these things on his feet, Fengwu and the others had reason to believe that the sea god would definitely wear these accessories on his feet. So this is the sea god? Are you kidding me? Why does he have the temperament of a nouveau riche? Are you sure this guy isn't just another trick that the sea god came up with? No one would believe that the guy who had hung himself like a human-shaped Christmas tree after his death was the sea god when they first saw him. Don't think I'm fooled just because I'm not well educated. This guy must be a fake. That was what most people were thinking. Only a few people with sharp eyes noticed that the things hanging on the sea god's body were not ordinary. The lowest grade among them was legendary. The highest grade among them was semi-god equipment. It was unbelievable. Who would have thought that the extremely rare legendary and semi-god equipment of the heavenly wind continent would be hung all over the sea god's body like ordinary accessories? Lu Wuji's eyes burned passionately as he looked at the rare treasures hanging on the sea god's body. He made up his mind to grab as many as he could. As the crowd was hesitating whether they should go up and grab the treasures, the sea god suddenly opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, everyone took a huge step back in shock. The sea god opened his eyes, which were as blue as the ocean. His eyes did not seem to have any life. The sea god glanced at Mingxi, Luwuji, and Caesar. The three were startled. Being stared at by a god like that, they felt like they were being stared at by the god of death. As the three were still in shock, a key flew out from each of their bodies. The three keys emitted a golden glow as they flew toward the sea god. A blue gem then flew out from the sea god's body. Then, under the crowd's gaze, the three keys merged with the blue gem. Gradually, a scepter appeared in front of everyone. The scepter was golden in color, with a huge blue gem embedded in it. The scepter was surrounded by golden vines, giving it a mysterious and alluring appearance. When the scepter was formed, the aura of the god weapon suppressed the crowd. It was the semi-god equipment, the sea god's scepter. Legend had it that the sea god's scepter was the weapon of the sea god. It was supposed to be a god weapon. Unfortunately, the sea god's scepter was heavily damaged during the Great Battle, dropping from a god weapon to a semi-god equipment. Although it was a semi-god equipment, it was not impossible to restore it to a god weapon. However, it would take a long time to do so. Although a semi-god equipment was not as precious as a god weapon, it was still a rare existence in the Heavenly Wind continent. Currently, only a few super factions possessed a semi-god equipment. These factions treated their semi-god equipment as their greatest treasure. Unless they encountered a calamity that forced them to use their semi-god equipment, most of the time, the semi-god equipment was more like a spiritual symbol that was kept in a secret room of the faction. Even the disciples of the faction might not be able to see one in their lifetime. Chapter 420. Now that the sea god's semi-divine weapon was right in front of them, how could they not be excited? Fengwu quietly stayed by Mingxi's side. She had no interest in the sea god's body that was covered in ornaments. This girl didn't care much about sacred or divine weapons. She already had Xiaochun, so other weapons were useless to her. Fengwu girl didn't plan on fighting for these useless things. Fengwu was the only one who thought this way. Most of the people were already rubbing their hands and waiting to strip the sea god naked. They might not even leave the sea god's underwear behind. A bunch of idiots. My baby, who was originally sitting quietly on Fengwu's head, suddenly opened its mouth and said a few words. Fengwu was a little confused. She touched the eggshell on baby's head in confusion. The sea god is famous for being stingy. He won't give away his things to others. Just wait and see. These people who want to steal the sea god's things are going to be in trouble. Baby's voice was filled with schadenfreude. The sea god's divine items were famous for being bad. If he was a kind god, he wouldn't have used the mortal emperor's tomb to protect his god's tomb. So if this guy really thought that the sea god was so generous, he was gravely mistaken. Baby and Fengwu's conversation was only through consciousness transmission, so the others didn't hear it. Fengwu knew that baby was very smart. Fengwu girl always believed what it said. After all, baby had never been wrong. She grabbed Mingxi's hand and held it tightly, not letting go no matter what. Mingxi thought that she was afraid. Instead, he gently patted the back of her hand with his other hand to make her relax a little. Other than Fengwu, there was another person who wasn't interested in the sea god's things. It was Xiazhua. Xiazhua only had one goal in entering the god's tomb, and that was the Heart of Water. He had to obtain the Heart of Water, and could not let it fall into Zicheng's hands. Xiazhua had already heard about the location of the Heart of Water from Zicheng's friends. He had already made up his mind. When these people started fighting over the treasures, he would seize the opportunity to obtain the Heart of Water. The location of the Heart of Water was very special. It wasn't in the main hall, but in the lotus pond outside the main hall. The Heart of Water was hidden in the lotus pond. Zicheng's friends said that after Zicheng entered the tomb of the god of sin, she directly fell into this lotus pond. When she waved her hand in the water, she accidentally grabbed a cold and soft thing. When she picked it up, she realized that it was the legendary Heart of Water. This heart of water should have been formed not long ago. If it hadn't grown up in the sea god's tomb and absorbed the weak divinity occasionally emitted by the sea god, this heart of water wouldn't have given birth to sentience so early. Yes, the heart of water that Zicheng picked up had sentience. Although it was weak, it still had its own consciousness. Although he didn't know why Zicheng didn't fall into the lotus pond, he couldn't miss this opportunity. He had to take advantage of the chaos to obtain the heart of water. Just as Xiaozhua made up his mind, someone finally couldn't resist the temptation and made a move. The first person to make a move rushed forward and extended his hand to grab a demigod artifact from the sea god's body. When their hand approached the sea god's body, the sea god's body suddenly emitted a soft blue light. When the blue light appeared, the person who made the first move flew out one by one as if they were hit by something. Sure enough, it wasn't easy to take something from the sea god's body. Although the sea god had been dead for 10,000 years, it wasn't easy to succeed. Ah, damn it. The people who were sent flying all screamed and cursed. This attack made them regain their senses. These people finally understood that they weren't facing the corpse of an ordinary person, but the body of a sea god. Even if the consciousness of this body had disappeared, just the divinity of this body wasn't something they could mess around with. No one noticed that when the sea god launched this attack, a figure disappeared from the hall. Everyone stared at the sea god with rapt attention, afraid that she would make her next move. Fortunately, the sea god didn't do anything else after this attack. She still sat there with her eyes closed and her scepter in her hand, as if she was asleep. After this battle, the people who wanted to make a move didn't dare to. However, Mingxi knew that the current peace was only temporary. No one could resist the temptation of these semi-divine tools. For the sake of their desires, it was only a matter of time before they rushed forward to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. As he thought, after 5 minutes of peace, some people could no longer hold themselves back and charged forward again. The number of people who charged forward was even greater than the first time. These people had come prepared. They had already used all kinds of methods to protect themselves from the sea god's attack. A group of people yelled and charged at the sea god. Their eyes were filled with greed. Another blue light flashed. Most people were already prepared, so not many people were hit by the attack. Most of them managed to escape the attack. A few lucky ones even managed to grab an accessory from the sea god's body. It's a sacred weapon. I'm also someone who has a saint artifact. A man shouted loudly. It's a legendary weapon. Why isn't it a semi-divine tool? Someone grumbled. Why didn't I get anything? The people who didn't manage to get anything were even more dissatisfied. After someone made a good start, everyone's passion was aroused. They were more enthusiastic than ever about grabbing something from the sea god's body. They all charged forward recklessly, trying to grab a piece of treasure from the sea god's body, even if it was just an ordinary piece of legendary equipment. That being said, even the most ordinary items were only comparable to the sea god's other possessions. A piece of legendary equipment was priceless in the outside world. The crowd almost went crazy trying to snatch something from the sea god's body. Mingxi pulled Fengwu to the side and hid. He did not join the crowd. His identity was noble, and he had seen countless treasures since he was young. Why would he want to compete with these people? Irene and Zicheng also joined the crowd. Even though there were so many people trying to snatch the sea god's equipment, only a few succeeded. Most people were knocked flying before they could even touch the corner of the sea god's clothes. Meanwhile, those who managed to snatch the sea god's equipment ended up as the targets of the others. A battle of life and death took place in the hall for the precious magic equipment. The clean hall was soon dyed red with blood. The air was filled with the smell of blood. To everyone's surprise, no one had died at the hands of the sea god, but at the hands of their own kind instead. The greed of human nature was magnified. Chapter 421. Fresh blood splattered across the hall. The sea god sat on the throne with an expressionless face. His eyes were still closed like a puppet. However, as the smell of blood in the hall grew stronger, the sea god's heart began to beat rapidly. The heartbeat was not loud, so the people who were busy competing for the treasures did not notice it. Only a few people who did not participate in the chaotic battle noticed the anomaly. Immediately, the faces of the people who noticed the anomaly changed, and they all took a few steps back. Meanwhile, the people who were fighting over the magic equipment were still busy fighting over the advanced magic equipment that was rarely seen in the outside world. It's mine. The half-martial tool is mine. Give it to me. I saw it first. Don't even think about taking it from me, it's mine. Hand over the half-martial tool, or I'll kill you. Thump 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 thump. The heartbeat grew heavier. Even the people who were blinded by the benefits before them finally heard it. What's that sound? Someone asked in fear. It sounds like a heartbeat. Yeah, it's a heartbeat. It's coming from the sea god's body. Could it be that the sea god is still alive? This guess successfully scared a lot of people. Stop guessing. The sea god is already dead. If he's still alive, why didn't he return to the realm of the gods? Why did he build a tomb like this in the human world? The person analyzed the situation rationally. That being said, it did make sense. At least, no one dared to question the sea god's survival anymore. But what's going on? Why would a dead person have a heartbeat? The heartbeat continued to grow louder and more frequent. For some reason, they felt like their hearts were beating faster too. That's right. Why would a dead person have a heartbeat? Everyone knew that the heart would only start beating when a person was alive. Once a person died, their heart would stop beating too. It was impossible for them to still have a heartbeat. Yeah, this is too strange. Why is it like this? The crowd could not figure it out. No one dared to go forward to compete for the magic equipment after being frightened by the heartbeat. Everyone took a few steps back in unison. No one dared to go any closer. Their eyes were filled with uneasiness, which grew stronger as the heartbeat grew louder. Ah! Why is this happening, my heart? It hurts. Stop it. Don't beat anymore, it hurts. As the heartbeat grew louder and louder, everyone present suddenly clutched their chests. Their faces turned pale as they fell to the ground in cold sweat. They felt their heartbeats getting faster and faster, as if their hearts were about to explode. It hurt, it really hurt. The shadow of death suddenly descended, and everyone lost their minds at this moment. Ming-Shi and Feng-Wu did not fall to the ground like everyone else, but the two of them were not much better. Their heartbeats were obviously several times faster than normal. If this continued, their hearts would definitely overload, and everyone would die here. Ming-Shi had the blood of a god. Although he did not have a god body, the sea god's heart could still affect him. The effect was much smaller than the others. Aside from his pale face and bloodless lips, he was not in unbearable pain like the others. Feng-Wu did not look well either. Feng-Wu was just an ordinary person. She did not have the blood of a god to protect her body. Although she had a divine weapon like the pure sword, the pure sword's function was to purify. It had no effect on other things. The damage she suffered was definitely much greater than Ming-Shi's. Her heart was about to explode. The pure sword emitted a faint white light to protect her heart, but it still could not completely relieve her of the pain. The sea god did not have any evil power. The pure sword could not attack anything that was not within its purification range. Ming-Shi looked at Feng-Wu's pained expression. He knew that if he did not act now, Feng-Wu and the others would die here. He used the pure sword to support himself on the ground and slowly stood up. He had to do something to stop the heartbeat. Remove the seal. Just as Ming-Shi wanted to do something to stop the sea god, two voices suddenly sounded. Suddenly, two voices rang out beside him, surprising him. These two voices were very familiar to him. They were the Margaret siblings. Ming-Shi turned his head and saw that there were two different patterns between the siblings' eyebrows. A pink peach blossom mark appeared between Margaret's eyebrows, while a camellia mark appeared between Matson's eyebrows. The siblings' bodies had also undergone a huge change. Firstly, they no longer looked like how they usually did. Margaret had a playful smile on her face. She was wearing a long white dress and had cute pink hair. A green staff fell from the sky into her hands. There seemed to be many strange flowers and herbs engraved on the staff. This was the 100-flower staff, the divine weapon of the god of spring. Matson's appearance had also changed from a young man, who could only be considered decent, to a handsome young man with brown hair. He was wearing a magic robe, and the long sword in his hand had also disappeared. Right now, he was holding a golden staff in his hand. This staff was completely golden, and there was an image of golden leaves engraved on it. Each leaf seemed to have a strange power. This was the divine weapon that represented the autumn god. Falling leaves. Spring flower autumn moon. Margaret's pink lips parted slightly. As she said these 4 words, a gentle breeze suddenly appeared in the hall. The wind seemed to carry peach blossoms that flew towards the sea god. The sea god's originally tightly shut eyes opened at this moment. There were still no emotions in his eyes. His gaze was numb and he looked like a puppet. This was not surprising. No matter how awesome he looked, it could not change the fact that he was already a dead man. How could a dead man show any emotions in his eyes? Autumn, take these people and leave first. Margaret's brows furrowed slightly as she spoke to Matson without even turning her head. Okay, Phaser, be careful. After Matson replied, he waved the staff in his hand. Everyone in the hall disappeared, including Mingxi and Fengwu. Matson leaped lightly off the ground. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly sensed something. He slowly descended from the sky and landed beside the lotus pond in the garden. Shozo held the heart of water in his hand excitedly. He had finally done it. The heart of water. He had finally succeeded in stopping Zicheng from obtaining this treasure that was related to the future of mankind. This time he could not let Zicheng obtain it. Not only the heart of water, but also the hearts of metal, fire, earth, wood and wood. He would not let someone like Zicheng obtain them. Chapter 422. At that moment, Xiazhua finally had some confidence in changing the direction of the future. He had returned to 100 years ago because he was afraid that he couldn't change the future. If the future couldn't be changed, then his rebirth would be meaningless. Fortunately, the future could be changed, and he finally did it. The butler and Yuan Yuan were also very excited. They were people who truly cared about Xiazhua. Before entering the tomb, Xiazhua had already told them that the heart of water could improve Xiazhua's body. In their minds, as long as Xiazhua obtained the heart of water, he could change his talent and no longer have to look at the so-called geniuses in the family. It's the heart of water. So the heart of water is in a place like this. A faint voice suddenly came from behind the 3 of them. There was someone. The 3 of them turned around and saw a handsome man holding a staff looking at the heart of water in Xiazhua's hand. His eyes had a trace of surprise, but there was no greed. Who are you? What do you want? The butler and Yuan Yuan stared at the young man, as if they were facing a great enemy. To be able to appear behind them without them noticing. The 2 of them didn't dare to underestimate the young man's strength. It was too strange. A person with such strength should be very eye-catching. Why had they never seen him among those people? The 2 of them couldn't figure it out, but they didn't dare to relax. Autumn Sage. Xiazhua saw the appearance of the person and sighed in relief. He didn't recognize the man in front of him now, but 100 years later he would. This man was one of the 4 Seasons Saint Emissaries, the Autumn Saint Emissary who represented autumn. The Autumn Saint Emissary was the successor of the Mid-Autumn Divine Seal. He controlled the divine weapon, the Fallen Leaves Divine Staff. Legend has it that the Autumn Saint came from the ancient Eastern country. He was an orphan who grew up in a temple. Later on, when he was 12 years old, the divine mark of autumn from the upper realm resonated with him and descended upon his body. From then on, an ordinary orphan became the successor of the divine mark and one of the 4 sages of Star Temple. Among the 4 Seasons sages, Autumn should be the oldest. He should be 23 years old now and officially took over the responsibility of the Autumn Sage. In his previous life, in order to prevent the destruction of the world, the Saint of Autumn used her own body to repair the cracks in space, buying more time for all humans to think of a way to resolve the danger of the world's destruction. It could be said that without the sacrifice of the Autumn Saint, the world would have been destroyed before he could return to the past. Xiazhua was full of admiration for such a person who was willing to sacrifice himself to save the world. You know me? Autumn did not expect that someone would recognize him. He had taken over the position of saint for 2 years, and was the only one of the 2 Four Seasons saints who had officially taken up the position. Although he had solved many problems in the past 2 years, there were not many people who had seen him before. How did this young man know that it was him? Of course, Xiaozhua couldn't answer this question. He couldn't tell anyone that he was reborn from the future. The fewer people who knew, the better. Fortunately, the situation was urgent and Autumn did not have the time to ask such a small question. Forget it, let's not talk about it for now. You guys leave with me first. With a wave of his staff, before the three of them could react, they had already appeared in a special space. This space was filled with many villages and camellias. Many people were sitting under a large tree, each of them clutching their chests, as if they had suffered heavy injuries. Xiaozhua's heart tightened, and he hurriedly searched for Kaiser, Elisa, and the others in the crowd. Outside the sea god's tomb, Ajur suddenly felt two holy auras break through the sky and rush into the sea, entering the sea god's tomb. Ajur's eyes widened. This aura. Could it be them? Not long after the two auras appeared, a handsome man with brown hair broke through the water's surface. He slowly flew out of the water and landed on Ajur's ship. Who are you? Who allowed you to come on the ship? Riot and Mo Gui's eyes widened nervously as they looked at the newcomer. This person seemed very strong. Heavens, he wasn't here to cause trouble, was he? The two of them wailed in their hearts. When the people waiting on the other ship saw someone come out, they immediately looked into the water, hoping that the person they were waiting for would also come out of the water. Unfortunately, they didn't see a single person after waiting for a long time. Why are you here? Ajur had been wondering if it was those two fellows. He didn't expect it to be true. Wait a moment. Autumn smiled and waved her staff. Suddenly, a large group of people appeared on Ajur's ship like a human pyramid. There were at least 200 people on the ship. Their ship wasn't that big, so it would be strange if they didn't stack up. Fortunately, Mingxi and Fengwu were lucky. They weren't the ones at the bottom. Senior Mingxi. Riot was very excited. Because of the triangular relationship between O'Brien and the other two, he was almost mentally and physically exhausted. It wasn't easy for him to see someone who could make decisions. How could he not be happy? If it weren't for the fact that this wasn't the right place, this usually serious youth might have even done a lap dance to celebrate his good fortune. Heavens! Who's on top of me? Get off me immediately. It's so heavy. Whose butt isn't moving? Who the F***CK is on top of me? Get off me. Don't push. Get up, it's so heavy. A large number of screams sounded at the same time. Chapter 423. Through Qiu's explanation, Ajur and Mingxi finally understood why Qiu and Chun were here. So it was the High Priestess who predicted that I would be in danger, and had Qiu and Chun hide by my side. Mingxi did not expect that Qiu and Chun would appear here because of him. Star Hall's High Priestess predicted that he would encounter a calamity. If no one helped him, he would be in great trouble. Although he would not die, his vitality would be greatly damaged. The position of the four great emperors was extremely important in the human world. The successors of the four great emperors were also protected by the Star Hall. Once the Star Hall discovered that the successor was in danger, they would immediately send people to protect the successor. This was the case this time. When the High Priestess discovered that Mingxi, the future crown prince of the Silvermoon Ancient Kingdom, might encounter some unexpected danger, she immediately sent two sacred emissaries to protect him. This was why the two of them disguised themselves as siblings and met Mingxi by chance. In order to not let Mingxi discover their identities, the sacred emissary of Spring, Scarlet, and sacred emissary of Autumn, Majia, spent a lot of effort. When Mingxi's soul was sucked into the island of death, they almost could not help but rush in to save him. Fortunately, after contacting the High Priestess and learning that Mingxi's calamity was not here, the two of them gave up on the idea and waited for Mingxi to return from the island of death. Fortunately, they did manage to wait until the end. Mingxi had indeed returned alive. After knowing that Margaret and Margaret were his future colleagues, Spring and Autumn, Ajur was dumbfounded. These two had been hiding under his nose for so long without him noticing. Although he had long suspected that the siblings were sent by the Star Hall, he did not expect that the Star Hall would send sacred emissaries. Moreover, they were his future colleagues. This was not a good feeling. After explaining the identities of the two people, a huge water column suddenly appeared in the sea. The water column was several feet high and looked majestic. After the water column appeared, it disappeared in a few breaths of time. However, it caused many nearby ships to overturn because of the sound. Fortunately, no one was injured. When the water column disappeared, a pink-haired girl in a white dress appeared in the air. The 100-flower staff in her hand had disappeared. Her beautiful figure slowly descended from the sky and landed on Mingxi's ship, causing many to speculate about her identity. Phew, it's finally done. Scarlet walked into the cabin with a relaxed expression. What did you do with the sea god? Ajur was familiar with Scarlet. He asked as soon as he saw her come in. Mingxi had already explained what they might have encountered in the sea god's tomb. Mingxi's storytelling ability was much better than Fengwu's. With Mingxi's simple words, the thrilling scene of the battle appeared in front of Ajur's eyes. He broke out in a cold sweat on their behalf. Nothing much. I just sealed the sea god's tomb again. I don't think anyone will be able to find it this time. Scarlet blinked nonchalantly and said playfully. The tomb of the sea god had been sealed once more. As expected of the Four Seasons' holy envoy, Ajur could not reseal the tomb of the sea god as he was now. Hearing that the core of the tomb had been sealed, Mingxi breathed a sigh of relief. The sea god's tomb was too dangerous. It was better to keep it hidden in the sea forever. Fengwu was worried about the king's spirit and the others. The king's spirit wanted to save the souls of the other kings, so he did not reincarnate. She did not know how they were doing now. Don't worry about Xiaowu. They've already reincarnated. Bao Bao sat on Fengwu's head and sent a message to Fengwu. That's good. Knowing that the king's spirit and the others had reincarnated, Fengwu breathed a sigh of relief. As long as they were fine, she was relieved. As early as the last stage of the Tomb of the Gods, Bao Bao had already let the spirit of kings and the others reincarnate. They were all spirits and should have been reincarnated long ago, but because of the selfishness of the sea god, they had suffered for 10,000 years in this world. Now at the last stage, the spirit of kings and the others could no longer help. No matter how strong a spirit was, it did not have any advantage in front of a god. Not only that, their spirits would also be harmed by the god's aura. Since there was no use for them to stay, Bao Bao decided to let the king's spirit and the others reincarnate. Fortunately, they had left quickly. Otherwise, it was hard to say whether they would have been sealed together with the sea god. Right this? Phaser said as she took out a golden staff with sapphires from her space ring. Mingxi and Fengwu understood at a glance. Wasn't this the staff of the sea god? It had fallen to the level of a demigod artifact, but it was still a rare treasure. If it was discovered, who knew how many people would fight over it? Phaser took it out to see if Fengwu wanted it. It was a treasure to others, but to Phaser, who had a divine artifact, it held no attraction. Without waiting for her to finish speaking, the sea god's staff turned into a ray of light and flew into the sky. Seeing the demigod artifact disappear, Spring Crimson shrugged. I wanted to give it to Xiaowu to play with, but it looks like that won't be possible. It already has a trace of intelligence. Divine artifacts with intelligence will take responsibility for their masters. It looks like it's gone to find a new master, Moria said. Fengwu didn't feel anything special about losing a demigod artifact like the sea god's staff, even if she knew that Phaser had originally wanted to give it to her to play with. The curtains were finally drawn on the sea god's tomb. Ajur told Mingxi about the return of Feng Yanran and the others, but Mingxi didn't comment on their return. He would only report the trio's performance to the academy as it was. As for how the academy would deal with them, that wasn't something Mingxi cared about. Standing at the entrance of Notre Dame du Starlight, Riot felt as if he'd been reborn. Along the way, he'd encountered countless disasters, both big and small, and the trio who were experts at tricking their teammates. He really felt that the only reason he'd come back alive was because he'd been too successful as a magician in his past life. We're finally back. We're going to have a big meal later to get over the shock. Riot felt that eating more was the only way to recover the courage he'd lost from excessive worry. I want to go too. Senior Riot, You don't mind treating us juniors to a meal, right? Ajur didn't forget to help him and Fengwu. Fengwu, eyes shining yummy food. Riot's mouth twitched. The meal opposite them seemed a little expensive, but he wasn't a stingy person. Though he felt a little pained about the money, he still nodded and agreed to treat them. Chapter 424. It didn't seem right to only invite Ajur and Fengwu, so he asked the others if they wanted to eat together. As expected, Mingxi, Feng Yanran, and the other two said they had something to do, but Mo Gui agreed without hesitation. After entering the school, everyone said their goodbyes and went back to their own dorms to tidy up. Feng Wu led Xiaoyi into the dormitory with the key. The dormitory was very clean, and it was obvious that someone had cleaned it. Sure enough, when Silda heard the door open and came downstairs, his eyes lit up when he saw Fengwu. Even Anika had returned to the dorm. The three girls sat together, making tea, chatting, and eating snacks. Xiaowu, why are you only back now? Classes will officially start in 2 days. Most of the people who are supposed to go back to school are already back, except for you and Rika. We couldn't get in touch with you, so we were worried that something might have happened to you that affected your return to school. Anika ate the snacks Fengwu brought back from Falling Jade Island, her face full of satisfaction. The snacks were delicious, crispy, sweet, and fragrant. She had to give it a thumbs up. We went to the tomb of the god of sin. Fengwu gnawed on a snack like a little squirrel, her eating speed as fast as ever. The tomb of the god of sin. The tomb of the sea god that's been the talk of the town. I heard that it's very dangerous, and many people have died there. Why would you want to go to such a dangerous place? Tell us what happened on your way there. Silda was clearly very curious about what had happened to Fengwu's group. Fengwu didn't have a talent for storytelling, so the story from her mouth wasn't very entertaining. It was like reading a poem without any emotional fluctuations. Still, Silda and Annika listened with keen interest. Did you meet Rika in the tomb of the god of sin? Anika drank her fruit tea. Fengwu thought for a moment. I met her once, but I didn't see her again. Fengwu had gone through several instances of the tomb of the god of sin, but she had only met Rika once. She'll be fine, right? Anika asked worriedly. Although Rika had a bad personality, was competitive, and was very arrogant, she and Anika were still close because they were in the same department and class. Rika hadn't come back yet, and Anika was the one who was most worried about her. It's okay, he's still alive, Fengwu said seriously. The corner of Annika's mouth twitched. She was relieved, as long as he was alive. After chatting with Zilda and the others for a while, Fengwu brought Xiaoyi to Elliot's dinner party. Xiaoyi was held in Fengwu's arms, and his black eyes were wide open. Little White followed closely behind Fengwu. When they arrived, Riot, Mo Gui, and Ajur were already waiting for them. Fengwu had been delayed by chatting with her roommates, so the three of them had arrived more than 10 minutes ago. They had even ordered the dishes. Xiaowu, come and sit. I've already ordered your favorite dishes. Ajur waved. Mo Gui's mouth twitched. Was there anything Fengwu didn't like to eat? She didn't seem to be a picky eater. Riot couldn't be bothered with them, and asked the waiter to serve the dishes. There were only 4 of them, but they had ordered more than 20 dishes. They were determined to eat. Fengwu's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She felt a malicious gaze fixed on her from behind. She turned around but didn't see anything. She ignored it and sat down to eat. In a private room that Fengwu couldn't see, Eve was glaring at Fengwu through the door. Eve was looking for a chance to take out Fengwu in the tomb of the god of sin, but she never had the chance. Their group had encountered a great danger during the trip to the tomb of the god of sin. Luckily, they were saved by a mysterious person in the end. However, the mysterious person had stayed on Fengwu's boat after saving them. Eve was extremely displeased by it. Why would someone so powerful be friends with Fengwu? Even though she had met a lot of people that she rarely met, Eve was well aware of her family's background. They were only willing to talk to her because of Zicheng. If it weren't for Zicheng, no one would bother with a daughter of a small clan like her. Even though she was never jealous of Zicheng's popularity, she was unwilling to lose to someone like Fengwu, who she had always looked down on. Rika had also survived the trip to the tomb of the god of sin. She was lucky enough to find a legendary magic ring suitable for a water magician. The ring was not given to her by Zicheng. Rika was lucky enough to find it. Eve had also found a legendary defensive necklace suitable for her. Zicheng had given it to Eve. Eve was happy to wear the necklace for a few days. Zicheng had found a half-magic level crown. It was an accessory worn by the god of sea. Zicheng had managed to snatch it. It was quite a shocking haul. It should be known that for many people who entered the divine tomb, it was already a miracle for them to be able to survive safely, let alone bring out so many good things. If the three of them were to tell others about their harvest, they would definitely be envied to death. Eve, what are you looking at? Rika glanced in the direction Eve was looking at. I'm looking at someone I hate, Eve said in a disgusted tone. Eve, stop it. Fengwu isn't a bad person. Why do you hate her so much? Zicheng said helplessly. Zicheng already knew Eve had a strong grudge against Fengwu, even though the grudge seemed to come out of nowhere. I just can't stand her pretending to be innocent. She's hanging out with these men every day, yet she still pretends to be innocent. It's so disgusting. Eve poured herself a glass of wine and downed half of it in a single gulp. Zicheng pulled her hand down to stop her from drinking. Don't drink so much. We still have to go back to school. I know. Eve put down the glass and didn't continue drinking. If you don't like her, then we'll have less contact with her in the future. Don't think of ways to deal with Fengwu. She's still our classmate. If you make a move on her for no reason, the school won't let you off. Zicheng softly persuaded. Rika's eyes darkened. Zicheng is right. If you make a move on her, then you'll be implicated. It's not worth it. But I just can't accept it. I don't want to let her go. I want her to die. Eve didn't hide her killing intent towards Fengwu. Eve had never been a forgiving person. If it weren't for the fact that Zicheng had the favorability system, their friendship would have capsized long ago as Zicheng became more and more popular. Because of the favorability system's absolute control, Eve couldn't have any other thoughts towards Zicheng. She couldn't have any negative feelings towards Zicheng. Chapter 425. Zicheng looked at Eve helplessly. She knew that Eve had always held a strong enmity towards Fengwu. She had asked Eve many times, but the only answer she got was that she didn't like Fengwu and wanted Fengwu to die. She really didn't know what to say. Eve's personality was so extreme. If it wasn't for the fact that Eve's favorability towards her had increased to 100%, she definitely wouldn't want to interact with such an extreme person. This kind of person wasn't easy to control, and was too narrow-minded. If she accidentally hurt her glass heart, she would become the poisonous snake in the story of the farmer and the snake and be bitten to death by her. Fortunately, she had the favorability system. Even if Eve's personality was problematic, it wasn't a problem to her. Compared to Eve, Zicheng discreetly sized up Rika. This Rika was actually a problem. She kept feeling that Rika seemed to have discovered something. Rika's favorability towards her didn't increase at all. It even dropped from 70 to around 60. What was going on? She had always treated Rika well. Although she didn't treat her as unreservedly as she treated Eve, she didn't treat her badly either. Why did her favorability increase so much? Could it be that she had discovered some secret? This guess made Zicheng's heart skip a beat. If that was the case, then this Rika couldn't be left alive. No matter if she had discovered something or not, it was abnormal for her favorability to drop so much. Perhaps she should find a chance to make her disappear forever. Rika didn't know that Zicheng already had the intention to kill her. She took a sip of red wine, and let the aroma of the wine spread in her mouth. Her eyes slightly narrowed as if she was enjoying the taste of the wine in her mouth. If you want to kill Fengwu without being punished by the school, I have an idea. Rika put down her wine glass and said casually, "What do you have in mind?" As expected, Eve's interest was piqued. She grabbed Rika's hand excitedly. "My method is both difficult and simple." Rika kept him in suspense. "Stop keeping me in suspense. Just say what you want to say." As expected, Eve was hopping mad. "Since you don't want to be punished by the school, as long as she's no longer a student of Notre Dame du Starlight, everything will be solved." Eve's eyes lit up. You mean you want her to break the school rules and be kicked out by the school? But was this possible? It was not easy for her to make such a big mistake. What's so difficult about that? Doesn't the school have a rule that if you hurt a fellow student, you'll be punished by the school? And the severity of the punishment depends on how much damage the other party has suffered. We just have to create an accident and make her the murderer of a fellow student. At that time, she'll have no choice but to leave the school. Rika said with a cold smile. She also hated Fengwu very much in her heart. It was just that she didn't show it on her face like Eve did. Having someone who wanted Fengwu dead so badly was the best thing for her. This was practically the best weapon for her, wasn't it? If she used this weapon well, she could return all the pain and humiliation that Fengwu had inflicted on her. Rika still remembered how she was humiliated by a Jur's illusion because of Fengwu. You're right. This is a great idea. Let's see how she'll die this time. Eve said excitedly. She looked at Rika with a much gentler gaze. As the saying goes, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. As long as someone could help her defeat Fengwu, Eve had always been friendly. Seeing this scene, Zicheng became even more determined to kill Rika. Rika was indeed a smart person. Unfortunately, this smart person was suspicious of her. In order to keep her secret, she had to think of a way to get rid of Rika without leaving a trace. Rika didn't know that because of her performance just now, Zicheng wanted to kill her even more. If she knew, who knew what kind of expression she would have? After eating, Rika returned to her original dormitory. The moment she entered, she saw Anika and Silda sitting together and eating snacks. Rika, why are you back? Anika exclaimed in disbelief. Even Silda was looking at her with a frown. He was very puzzled by Rika's return. Ever since Rika was humiliated by a Jur, she had been very close to Zicheng and the others. Some time ago, she even moved into Violet's dormitory and went in and out with Zicheng. For a long time, they could see Rika, Zicheng, and Eve together. Even Anika wasn't as close to her as before. They all thought that Rika would never come back. They didn't expect her to come back to the dormitory. What happened? Could it be that she had some conflict with Zicheng? Anika worriedly guessed the reason for Rika's return. She still had feelings for Rika. After all, they were very close friends in the first semester. Not only were they in the same dormitory, but they were also in the same class. They had always been close to each other in school. However, as her relationship with Zicheng and the others improved, Rika became more distant. I'm also a part of this dormitory. Why can't I come back? Rika said expressionlessly. Didn't you move into Zicheng's dormitory? Silda was also curious about the reason for her sudden return. Then I won't be able to move back here. Leaving this sentence behind, Rika turned around and went upstairs. Anika and Silda looked at each other, not knowing what to say. I'll go up and take a look. Anika was still quite worried about her friend. She wondered if her friend had encountered something difficult to solve. Go on. Remember to tell me firsthand when you come down, Silda said. 3 black lines appeared on Rika's forehead. Gossiping at a time like this. After Anika went upstairs, she knocked on Rika's door and entered Rika's room. Rika was sitting lazily behind the desk, scribbling in a notebook. Anika didn't know what she was writing. When Fengwu returned to the dormitory, it was almost evening. The sky was no longer bright, and was covered by a thin layer of black gauze. Fengwu had just opened the door when Silda pulled her to the side. Xiaowu, big news. Rika is back, she said mysteriously. Fengwu blinked in confusion. So what? Fengwu was confused. What was so surprising about Rika's return? She lived here anyway. Wasn't it normal for her to come back? Silda was really strange. Are you stupid? You know that because a Jur stood up for you last time. The two of you became enemies. She even moved into Eve's dormitory for so long because she didn't want to see you. I'm sure she came back this time because of you. She didn't come with good intentions. Serd said with a look of disappointment on his face. Because of her? Because of her? Fengwu couldn't understand why Rika would come for her. She blinked in confusion. Chapter 426. Silda was speechless. Just as he was about to say something, Annika came down. Annika's expression was a little strange. She seemed to be in deep thought. Silder took 2 steps forward and grabbed Rika's hand. How is it? Did you get anything out of her? Annika was stunned. Rika didn't say anything to me, but I feel that she's weird. She seems to have something on her mind. Annika said worriedly. Don't worry. What could possibly happen to her? She's very close to Zicheng and Eve now. Even if she has something on her mind, her 2 good friends will definitely help her solve it. Silder said nonchalantly. If Rika had something on her mind, it would definitely be related to Fengwu. She was most likely up to no good. Is that so? Annika was still a little worried, but she didn't say anything else. Forget it. Let's not care about her. Let's talk about the competition. When the new semester started, the school organized an extreme survival competition. All the students from the Swordmaster faculty have to participate. Moreover, all the students from the upper and lower grades are placed in the same arena. It's too disadvantageous for us, the lower grades. I really don't know what the school is thinking. Why would they organize such an unfair competition? Seard complained. All the students from the Swordmaster faculty are going? Annika had heard about the competition. However, the mage faculty was voluntary. They could participate if they wanted to, and no one would force them to. It was the first time she heard about the compulsory participation of the Swordmaster faculty. That's right. Starting from the 2nd grade, all the grades above have to participate. It's too unfair for us, who have just entered the 2nd grade, to be placed together with those seniors. Another competition? Fengwu blinked her big eyes and asked Silder. Yeah. You just came back so you don't know. This time, the school organized an extreme survival competition. I heard that the top 10 students will be sent to a very dangerous special mission. This competition is to select talents for that mission. Special mission? Fengwu couldn't figure out what the mission was, so she didn't think too much about it. The 3 girls sat on the sofa and began to discuss the extreme survival competition. I heard that the mission is very dangerous. If you want to survive in that place, just strength isn't enough. You also need luck and a certain amount of survival skills. Anyway, the school organized a competition for that mission. No one knows what the mission is. We only know that if we succeed and get selected, the benefits are extraordinary. I heard that we have a chance to join the Star Hall. Annika's face filled with yearning when she mentioned the Star Hall. If you want to join the Star Temple, why don't you join the School of Theology? Those fellows in the School of Theology are either divine officers or saintesses after they graduate. Those are the lucky ones who directly join the Star Temple, Silda said. Annika said angrily. You think I don't want to? I went to the Star School when they were recruiting, but the teachers there said that I don't have divinity and can't communicate with the gods. They wouldn't accept me no matter what. Annika was very indignant at this point. She wanted to join the Star Hall since she was young, so she always aimed to become a saintess. She never thought that she would be rejected by the Star School because she didn't have divinity. In the end, she had no choice but to apply for the Notre Dame du Starlight. She felt very miserable when she thought about it. Then are you planning to participate in the extreme survival competition this time? Of course. I have to grab this opportunity no matter what. This might be the only chance in my life to join the Star Hall. Annika clenched her hands with determination. Fengwu remembered that she had a friend from the Star Hall. Was the Star Hall that amazing? Why did Rika want to go to the Star Hall so much? The Fengwu girl who wasn't a native couldn't understand at all. The people of this world worshipped and yearned for the Star Hall. A few days later, school started. The news of the extreme survival competition had already spread throughout the school. All the students were looking forward to the competition. In this atmosphere, the school suddenly issued a notice to punish a group of students. A total of 4 students were given major demerits. These 4 people were Zicheng, Feng Yanran, Mildy, and O'Brien. The 4 of them were given major demerits because they didn't listen to their captain's orders and acted on their own. Feng Yanran and the other 2 were a bit better. There were some students who didn't listen to their captain's orders before, but after they were given demerits, they became much more obedient. But what the hell was with releasing a monster? How much courage did one have to do something like that? It was a miracle that they weren't expelled by the school. Why do you think Zicheng released that monster? How would we know? I really couldn't tell. She's usually gentle and soft. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Isn't that right? That's why the more beautiful a woman is, the more different she looks. When choosing a woman, you should choose someone like me who looks the same. A chubby girl with freckles on her face said. Next to her, a group of boys immediately jeered. Zicheng walked past these students with a pale face. Mingxi really reported her. Fortunately, she always had a good impression in the teacher's eyes. She had already explained that it was because she didn't know that there was a monster suppressed inside that she pulled out the suppressing demon sword. The school didn't have any evidence to prove that she knew that the suppressing demon sword was suppressing a demon general. This was why she was only given a major demerit. If it was proven that she knowingly committed a crime, she was afraid that she would immediately be expelled from the school. Eve saw that she suffered such a big grievance. How could she still stand there? She wanted to rush up and tear apart those people who were talking nonsense. Zicheng didn't want to provoke public anger at this time. He pulled Eve and didn't let her act rashly. The two of them quickly walked 2 steps away from this area. Zicheng's craze of pulling out the sword and releasing the demon hadn't passed yet. He didn't expect that another big thing would happen in the school. A student in the school was killed. The killer and the killed were both people on the demerit list. The one who died was O'Brien. The one who killed was Mildy. This murder case only happened for a day, but it caused a sensation in the entire school. Mildy and O'Brien, this fiancé couple, were relatively well known. Both of them were of noble birth. However, O'Brien's family was already going downhill. If Mildy didn't like O'Brien and asked her parents to help O'Brien's family wouldn't have had the chance to recover. Mildy's love for O'Brien could definitely make any man envious. A woman was willing to do everything for you and even promote your family. This was simply the dream of many men. However, O'Brien had always been indifferent to Mildy. This made many girls feel that Mildy wasn't worth it. Mildy didn't have many female friends. Before she met O'Brien, Mildy also had some friends. However, because she suspected that they were interested in O'Brien, she alienated them. Chapter 427. Milty's love for O'Brien was as hot as the sun in July. No one would have thought that the two would end their love in such a way. Oh my God, Milty really killed O'Brien. Didn't she love that man very much? Why did she kill him? How would I know? Could it be that the love was so deep that she cut him off? Could it be that O'Brien had another girlfriend behind Milty's back and wanted to break up with her? Milty couldn't take it, so she killed O'Brien. It's possible. With Milty's personality, it's possible. Some of the people who knew Milty and O'Brien had come up with several scripts about the love and grudges between the two. You're all wrong. Let me tell you the truth. A female voice said mysteriously. You know? Everyone was doubtful. Please, I know that my brother isn't here. Jariet, was in the same traveling group as O'Brien. I guarantee that no one knows better than me about the love and hate between the two of them. The person who spoke was actually Jariet's sister. After Jariet came back to school, he chatted with his sister a little more. He even used the love triangle between O'Brien and the other two as a negative example to educate his sister. If he knew that his sister had spread the words about him educating his sister, he would probably give her a good spanking. That's right, something like this happened right after returning from a trip. Something must have happened while you were traveling. Quick, tell me what happened. The onlookers felt that what she said made sense. Hence, they gave her a seat and let her stand in the middle to talk. Jariet's sister proudly walked to the middle of the crowd and described the love triangle between Feng Yanran, O'Brien and Milty vividly. It was as if she had seen it with her own eyes and listened to Jariet's sister's story. Feng Yanran had turned from a new goddess to a shameless mistress. She had caused the death of one of the two fiancés. Who knew what would happen to the other? No matter what the relationship between the two was, O'Brien was a student of Notre Dame du Starlight. The school didn't allow students to kill each other. Milty killed a student of Notre Dame du Starlight. She would definitely be expelled from the school. Before that, she would be locked in the reflection room to reflect. The reflection room wasn't just a place for reflection. There were all kinds of dangers inside. Staying in there for a day felt like a year. There was once a senior who killed his classmate out of jealousy. As a result, he was punished and sent to the reflection room for 10 years. After 10 years, he would be expelled from school. Back then, when that senior came out, he had already been tortured to the point of insanity. His entire body no longer resembled a human. His appearance was simply terrifying. Since then, no one wanted to enter the reflection room. They all regarded entering the reflection room as a dangerous path. Because Feng Yanran interfered and caused her fiancé to fall in love with someone else, Milty angrily killed her scumbag fiancé. However, she paid for it with her own life. As a mistress, the destroyer of Milty and O'Brien's relationship, Feng Yanran didn't suffer any harm in this incident. This made most of the students in the school dissatisfied with Feng Yanran. The students who hated her soon accounted for more than half of the students in the school. This was an unimaginable blow to Feng Yanran, who was popular with boys as soon as she entered the school. Feng Yanran suddenly became a rat on the street. She was almost killed by those girls who didn't like her. Her life could be described as an abyss of suffering. Less than 2 days after Milty killed her fiancé, another big incident happened in the school. Milty committed suicide. When the news came out, the whole school was in an uproar. No one thought that Milty would commit suicide. How much did she love O'Brien? She was willing to commit suicide for him. Milty's death caused a great uproar. However, the school had just started and 2 students had died. For this matter, a teacher was specially sent to investigate. In the end, the results of the investigation showed that Milty did commit suicide. There were no traces of murder. This incident ended with Milty's death. The relationship between Milty's family and O'Brien's family was completely broken. Since then, the 2 families had become mortal enemies. I heard that Milty left a suicide note before she died. The suicide note explained how she killed her fiancé and why she wanted to commit suicide. Ajur and Fengwu sat together in the student cafeteria, enjoying the delicious food on the 3rd floor. Why did she want to commit suicide? O'Brien didn't like her. She could have just found someone who liked her. Master also said that feelings can't be forced. Forcing a relationship won't lead to happiness. Fengwu took a bite of barbecued meat and looked at Ajur with a serious face. Probably because she loved him too deeply. Milty's character was a bit extreme. She valued love more than anything else. She didn't have any dignity in front of O'Brien. A smart woman wouldn't put herself in such a low position. Ajur didn't have any good feelings towards Milty. A crazy woman who went crazy for love was simply a lunatic. Xiaowu, you can't be like this in the future. No matter how much you like Senior Mingxi, you can't be like Milty. Ajur took the opportunity to educate her. Fengwu nodded obediently. She wasn't Milty. How could she be like Milty? Milty's and O'Brien's deaths were spread around the school for a few days. That was because the extreme survival competition had started accepting applications. Other than the swordsman department, there were also applications from the mage department, pharmacist department, music department, alchemy department, and formation department. There were many applicants from the other departments. Everyone was aiming for the 10 spots to enter the Star Hall. The Star Hall rarely recruited outsiders. This was a rare opportunity to enter the Star Hall. As long as one had the heart, no one would be willing to give it up. The extreme survival competition this time was divided into a team competition and an individual competition. The team competition consisted of 10 people in a group, while the individual competition only counted the results. The competition was carried out in the virtual realm. The arena was simulated by the virtual realm. It was a 100% realistic competition. The fiery and tea-like sign-up activities made the shadow brought by the deaths of Enmildi and the others disappear a lot. As a member of the swordsman department, Fengwu didn't need to register. She just needed to participate in the competition. Ajur wasn't interested in the spot to enter the Notre Dame du Starlight. He didn't register at all. Zicheng, Eve, and Irene had already registered. Zicheng wasn't interested in the spot to enter the Star Hall. She was only interested in the legendary special mission. What kind of mission would make the school spend so much effort to prepare? She thought that she would find out. Needless to say, Irene would also participate. The time to snatch the female lead's opportunity had arrived. The Heart of Wood. This time's mission was related to the Heart of Wood. Irene herself had wood elemental magic talent. When the time came for her to obtain the Heart of Wood, her strength would definitely rise to another level. Chapter 428. In order to get the Heart of Wood, she had to get into the top 10 in this competition no matter what. However, this competition was not easy. It was a test of her survivability and adaptability. Although it was a little difficult, she was confident that she would get into the top 10. There were many people who were as determined as Irene. Everyone wanted to get into the top 10. As for what the special mission was, it was not that important. As long as they could get the chance to enter the Star Hall, it did not matter what the mission was. Tianya, this is your chance to show off. No one in the Swordmaster department is your match. Arguros elbowed Tianya and smiled a little wretchedly. Tianya did not even look at him. He focused on wiping the long sword in his hand with the white cloth in his hand. His attitude was serious, as if he was doing something very important. Stop fooling around. Have you registered? I plan to show off my skills in this competition, Ruglas said eagerly. Of course. Arguros patted his chest proudly. Oh right, is Mingxi going? Ruglas suddenly asked. Of course he is. He has already registered. This time, our whole team will go together. Elena will go too. Let's see who can stop us from getting into the top 10. Arguros was very confident in the overall strength of their team. Other than Mingxi team, there were many other teams that participated in the competition together. Although the teams were randomly grouped, they might be lucky enough to be grouped together. Amidst the cheering, the Extreme Route Survival competition finally began in the virtual realm. Good morning, everyone. It's now 8 o'clock in the morning. As a 7th grade senior, I, Tamantia, will be the one to announce the live report of our temple's Extreme Survival Challenge competition. I believe everyone has already recognized the person beside me. Let us welcome the Vice President. Following Teras's agitated words, thunderous applause rang out. F*CK. It really is the Vice President. The Vice President is actually here to be the host? I'm not dreaming, am I? The Vice Principal sat on the stage and waved at the students below. In the school in the Mirage, a magic screen appeared in midair. On the screen, the Vice Principal and Teras's faces were very clear. Even the corner of the Vice Principal's mouth, which was hidden under his white beard, was clearly shown. Outside the school, a large group of people had gathered to watch the fun. These people were not Notre Dame du Starlight's people. They were leaning against the wall and the gate, watching the activities of Notre Dame du Starlight with great interest. This year's Extreme Survival Challenge will be divided into a team competition and an individual competition. Now our academy's teachers will teleport all students into the arena. After entering the arena, please memorize the rules. If you are found to have broken the rules, you will immediately be disqualified. Tamantia pretended to blink playfully, which immediately caused many boys below the stage to howl. Passing through the door of light, all the participating students of the school arrived at a spacious square. On the square, there were all kinds of survival tools. On the stage, a teacher explained the rules of the team competition to the students. The team competition consisted of 10 people in a team. The whole team had to reach the finish line to win the competition. If one person did not reach the finish line, the whole team would be disqualified. The teams were randomly formed. Before the competition began, the main god of the Mirage, or in other words, the weapon spirit, would announce the names of the teams. The names were all randomly written by the main god of the Mirage. It was absolutely fair. Of course, it was very likely that there would be serious discrepancies in the team list made by the Lord God. However, luck was also a kind of strength. If one was unlucky and was placed in a weak team, one could only say that they were a little unlucky and could not blame anyone. Before forming a team, All the contestants had to do was to pick out what they needed the most from the large pile of outdoor daily necessities and bring it with them. Each person could bring 5 items that they deemed necessary. They could choose less, but they were not allowed to choose more. Fengwu chose a tent in the wilderness and a magic water purifying tool. The magic water purifying tool was able to purify water. In the real world, a magic water purifying tool like this would cost a fortune. It could only be mass-produced in a virtual world like the Mirage. Apart from the tent and the magic water purifying tool, she also chose a flint and a dagger. Finally, she asked for an iron pot, the kind used for cooking. Fengwu was the first one to pick out all 5 items. Many people still didn't know which one to pick out right away. Most of them chose flints, some chose tents, and even more chose weapons. Because magic and doqi were prohibited in the competition space, weapons like magic tents and magic swords would not appear at all. The items on the square were ordinary weapons. There were sabers, swords, and daggers. There were also bows and axes. There were even wooden sticks. However, not many people chose wooden sticks. Most of the boys chose sabers or swords. Some of the younger students chose swords or daggers. None of them chose wooden sticks. After choosing the weapons they needed, the main god announced the names of the teams. Fengwu was in the same group as a few boys and girls that she did not know. Among them, there were 5th-year seniors and 2nd-year juniors like Fengwu. In short, the ranks of the team were uneven. Furthermore, the way the seniors looked at Fengwu and the others was as if they were dragging them down. There were 6 boys and 4 girls in the group. Among the 6 boys, there was a 5th-year student, 2 4th-year students, and 3 3rd-year students. Among the 4 girls, there was a 4th year and a 3rd-year student. The remaining 2 were Fengwu and a 2nd-year magician girl. This kind of team was not strong, but it was not weak either. Most of the participants were from the Swordmaster department. There were not many magicians. Their entire team only had a 2nd-year magician girl. Apart from the Swordmaster department, there were also 3 people from the Alchemy department, Music department, and Alchemy department. There were not many people in the entire team who could fight. If they were to encounter a battle, they did not know if they could survive. The only 5th-year student present, Ober, scratched his head in annoyance. This kind of team was really hard to inspire confidence in. Since the team was formed, they had no choice but to go. Everyone greeted each other and began to introduce themselves. I am Shinda, a 4th-year swordmaster. I am Karon, a 4th-year alchemy department student. I am Majan, a 3rd-year swordmaster. My hobby is cooking. You can leave the cooking work to me in the future. Majan was a very cheerful boy. He laughed and said, I am Cabe, a 3rd-year swordmaster. I am Shandy, a 3rd-year music department student. The girl named Shandy said shyly, I am Anma, a 4th-year potions department student. Hello, seniors. I am Kamir, a 2nd-year magician. I am Fengwu, a 2nd-year swordmaster. Chapter 429. I'm Fengwu, a 2nd-year swordsman. I'm Bowen, a 3rd-year mage. I'm Ober, a 5th-year swordsman. After a round of self-introduction, they finally understood each other's abilities and names. After the self-introduction, everyone reported what they had chosen. The 10 of them all chose weapons and flints. Since they couldn't use magic or combat energy, flints were a necessity. About 7 out of the 10 of them chose flints. Only Fengwu chose a tent. Seeing the tent she chose, everyone immediately labeled her as a hindrance. After seeing Fengwu's iron pot, she was completely despised by the others. What was the use of an iron pot and a tent? If you were tired, you could just find a tree or a cave to sleep. Why would you need a tent? It was a waste of opportunity. An iron pot was even more useless. Who would choose to use an iron pot during a competition? It was inexplicable. Fengwu girl, who didn't know that she was despised, was now in a little trouble. Because this competition didn't allow the participants to bring their own storage equipment. The storage equipment they were wearing was the same as the ones prepared by the school. A storage equipment had 20 storage slots, which could only store 20 different kinds of things. Because they had already used up 5 storage slots to choose the things they wanted to bring into the competition. Each of them had 15 storage slots to use. And in these 15 storage slots, they had to go to another area to choose the food they wanted to bring with them. Each of them could choose 3 days' worth of food to bring into the competition. After the food was finished, they had to find other edible food in the competition venue. There were many poisonous plants in the competition venue, which meant that they couldn't choose the wrong one. Once they chose the wrong one, they would be poisoned. If they were unlucky, they would be directly poisoned to death and be eliminated from the competition. Dying in the competition venue wouldn't cause any damage to the mental power, because the competition venue was a dungeon. Dying in a dungeon was just being eliminated from the dungeon. It was different from dying in a dungeon. The food provided by the school was very sufficient. There were meat, bread, biscuits, and even steamed buns and steamed buns. Most of the people here chose bread and dried meat, along with a few bags of fresh water. As for water, each person was only allowed to bring 3 water bags. After drinking 3 water bags, they had to find a way to get drinkable water. If they couldn't find any water, their body would be too thirsty and their stamina would drop. If they couldn't find any water, they would be disqualified from the competition due to severe dehydration and would be kicked out of the competition. Fengwu was the only one in the team who had chosen to use the water purifying equipment. Luckily, the others were a lot friendlier toward her because of her contribution. Fengwu picked out jerky, meat buns, and steamed buns. After bringing 3 days' worth of food, she also took a water bag. Everything was ready. After all the students had made their choices, they would be sent to the challenge arena in groups. According to the rules, they had to rely on the combined efforts of their team members to survive on the field and find the hidden school emblem on the field. Every team of 10 members had to find one emblem in order to pass the test. Missing one emblem was not an option. It made the competition even more difficult. The challenge arena they would be entering was a spacious space with harsh living conditions. Every minute they spent in it would be more dangerous. Not only would they have to face the harsh living conditions in the challenge arena, they would also have to face the danger of their own kind. They were allowed to steal the badges. If they were unlucky enough to stumble into a super strong team, they could easily be wiped out. Everyone, we can see that the participants are ready. Let's invite the teachers to send these adorable juniors to the challenge arena. Tamancha's elegant voice appeared once again. Soon, the screen showed the students falling from their original positions. It was as if a hole had suddenly appeared in the ground. They all fell into the hole without any preparation. Wow. I realized that our teachers are quite good at playing pranks. These participants didn't even know what happened, and they fell into the hole. Tamancha said playfully. The students who weren't participating in the challenge arena had already entered the mirage to watch the challenge arena. Hearing Tamancha's playful words, they all smiled knowingly. Vice Principal, can you tell us more about the environment the participants will face? I heard that the Extreme Survival Challenge this time is to test the students' ability to survive in harsh environments. May I ask what the purpose of this challenge is? Learn from others. As our students grow older and stronger, they will face all kinds of difficulties. If we are in a place where we can't use magic or combat aura, we will become ordinary people who don't know anything. When that happens, we will know how to survive and think of a way to escape from danger. The purpose of this competition is to train our students' ability to deal with crises, survive in the wild, resist stress, and the vice principal spoke at length, but the students below the stage didn't buy it. Didn't you say that this competition was changed because you wanted to choose the candidates for the special mission? Don't mention the vice principal's nonsense. If this was really the reason, then this competition should have been held thousands of years ago. Why would we wait until now? The vice principal is getting better at talking nonsense. How can there be such a grand reason? As expected of the vice principal, his ability to talk nonsense is getting better and better. Who is it? Who threw a hidden weapon at me? My ass. Which bastard kicked me? The teachers below the stage were all speechless as they looked at the students who were looking for the culprit. They then looked at the vice principal who was still sitting on the stage and bragging about this competition, as if it was healthy and good. It was impossible to tell that he had secretly taught these students a lesson. Brats, you are too careless. Don't you know that the vice principal is extraordinarily strong? He doesn't need to listen carefully to hear what you are saying. What's the difference between this and speaking ill of the vice principal in front of him? Don't you know that the vice principal is famous for being petty? If anyone offends him, he will openly make life difficult for you for a year. After the vice principal's explanation, Tamantia clearly didn't dare to ask the vice principal any more questions. All right. Thank you, vice principal, for giving us such a detailed explanation. Next, we will ask the teachers to help us switch the screen back to the arena. Everyone can watch the performance of each participant through the light screen. Chapter 430. All right. Thank you, vice principal, for giving us such a detailed explanation. Next, we'll ask the teacher to help us switch the screen back to the arena. Everyone can watch the performance of each contestant through the light screen. We can now see that the contestants are safely on their way. Following a series of screams, figures fell from the sky one after another, landing on the ground from various positions. Loud bangs rang out. If they were in the real world outside, they would have most likely been seriously injured by the fall. The place where they landed was a desolate and dilapidated small mountain village. The buildings in the mountain had already decayed to the point that they were in a bad state. From time to time, a few skinny rats would run across the village, seemingly a little panicked by the sudden intrusion of humans. Fengwu controlled her body and successfully landed on the ground. She did not suffer any injuries. Although all her strength was sealed in this place, her body's memory was still there. Fengwu could easily complete this landing by relying on her memory of moves and her ability to control her body. Other than Fengwu, the fifth-year Ober, and the fourth-year Swordmaster Xinda, everyone else suffered some injuries when they landed. For a moment, cries of pain rang out everywhere. However, after a few groans, these people quickly adjusted their state of mind and gathered together, sizing up the place where they landed. There was no one in the village, and the houses were almost uninhabitable. The damage was very serious, and it was unlikely that there would be anything to eat in such a house. They did not see anyone else near them, and it seemed that the venue this time was very large. They believed that it would not be so easy for them to meet the other teams. Haha, look at them falling one by one. This is so interesting. Fortunately, I was smart enough not to sign up. Otherwise, with my physique, I might have fallen to my death. What kind of scene is this? Why does it look so miserable? I don't see any natives, only dilapidated houses and malnourished plants. The contestants did not know that their performance on the arena was directly projected on the light screen. Not only were their images on the light screen, but even their voices could be heard clearly. Because the contestants were in different places, the light screen could not watch their landing methods one by one. It could only select some people to focus on. Junior brother Mingxi and junior brother Tianya were assigned to the same team. Isn't this team very powerful? Tamantia gasped in disbelief. She had never expected to see two heavyweights in the same team. Tianya had successfully become a fifth-year student, and Mingxi had also been promoted to sixth year. Those who were familiar with Notre Dame du Starlight knew that the further one went, the slower it would be to level up. This was because the difficulty of the final exam would increase as well. If one's ability was not good enough, one would have to study for 3 or 4 years in just one grade. By the time one graduated, one would already be middle-aged. Of course, if you are sure that you can't be promoted to the 7th grade, you can also apply for early graduation. The school will still give you a diploma, but it will be different from a normal graduation certificate. Mingxi and Tianya had always been geniuses in the school. Both of them were influential figures in the school. If there were no accidents, they would definitely graduate normally. Moreover, they wouldn't need to repeat their studies. It's true. This team is pretty lucky. But the other teams aren't that bad either. Many of them are led by 7th-year seniors. No matter how strong Mingxi and Tianya are, can they be stronger than 7th-year seniors? I don't believe it. The people who appeared on the screen were the members of Mingxi's new team. Mingxi and Tianya were pretty lucky. The only female in the team who had a combat profession was also a pharmacist. Pharmacists were very helpful to them. When they were injured, they could rely on the pharmacist's ability to refine medicine. Unlike Mingxi team, most of the other teams were not so lucky. For example, Elena was assigned to a weak team. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood. The various conflicts between these teams because of the strength of the members assigned to them were shown on the screen. However, the people on the screen did not know about these. Fengwu's team circled around the village. In the end, they didn't find anyone. Fengwu saw a group of Mingxi's starving rats run up to her and look at her pitifully. She took out a steamed bun from her storage space and fed it to them. Ah! Senior Ober, look, Fengwu is actually feeding these disgusting rats with food. A female soprano voice suddenly cut through the sky. The female magician of the same year as Fengwu, Kemi, pointed at Fengwu with a shocked expression. Her exaggerated appearance made people who didn't know better think that Fengwu had done something that angered the heavens. How can you use food to feed rats? We only have 3 days' worth of food to eat. If you finish your food in advance, don't expect the rest of us to share it with you, Kemi said righteously. Many people nodded in agreement. They didn't like Fengwu's practice of wasting food at will. This is my own food, I won't ask you to eat it, Fengwu said, looking at Kemi seriously. The translation of her meaning was, I'm feeding my own food. Even if I don't have enough food, I won't ask you to eat it, so whether I feed the rats with food or not is none of your business. After understanding the meaning, Kemi's eyes turned red with anger. You said it yourself, don't regret it when the time comes. Kemi turned around and left in a huff. The others didn't have the idea to meddle in other people's business. In any case, it was fine as long as she didn't ask them to share her food. As for her food, they didn't care who she shared it with. Fengwu and Shijin didn't like animals like rats very much, and usually had little contact with them, but these rats looked so pitiful that Fengwu couldn't turn a blind eye to them. Besides, she wanted to get some information from them, so she still had to give them the steamed bun. The little rat and several other little friends who smelled the steamed bun ran over and ate it together. Finally, they regained their strength. The rats here were polite and thanked Fengwu very kindly. Thank you, little beauty. If you hadn't fed us, we probably would have died like those humans. When the word died came out of the little rat's mouth, there was obviously a lingering fear. Are all the people in this village dead? Fengwu asked. They died a long time ago, no one is alive, the little rat said. Why did they die? Fengwu asked, puzzled. Because of the plague, of course. The whole village died of the plague. The city lord gave an order to lock up all the infected people in the village and let them fend for themselves. Fortunately, we were smart enough to hide at that time. Otherwise, I'm afraid even we would have died here. Chapter 431. From the Little Mouse, Fengwu learned the truth about why the village was abandoned. What was the epidemic? Of course, Fengwu knew about it. Before she transmigrated, Fengwu had heard her uncles and sisters-in-law in the village talk about the epidemic when she went down the mountain. Every time they talked about the epidemic, their expressions would change. At that time, Fengwu was curious and went home to ask her master what the epidemic was. Her master said that it was a disease that was highly contagious. If you accidentally contracted it, you would slowly die without any effective treatment. What is this place? There is no one here. Where did everyone go? Cabe circled around the area. Other than some spiders, mice and cockroaches, he could not find anything. Let's see if we can find the school emblem, Charon said as he opened a half-broken door. It shouldn't be here. It won't be so easy for us to find it, and Ma said without much hope. Most people agreed with her. Since this place was used as the starting point, there was no way they would place the important item here. Although they thought so, they still didn't want to give up any hope. One by one, they began to search for their own targets, wanting to see if they could find anything. There was an epidemic here. We should leave this place. Fengwu knew that the epidemic was highly contagious. Although the village had been abandoned for a long time, they would be in danger if the virus survived. Epidemic. How did you know? Everyone exclaimed and asked at the same time. Some were suspicious, while others did not believe it. It said so, Fengwu said with a serious face as she pointed at the little mouse that was happily munching on a steamed bun in front of her. You can understand the language of animals? Ober asked with surprise. Understanding animal language was not a big deal. Most adult magical beasts could speak human language. Sacred beasts were born with the ability to speak. Therefore, the ability to understand the language of animals was considered to be rather useless among the talent abilities. However, no matter how useless a skill was, it still depended on when to use it. Now that all of their abilities were sealed, if they could borrow Fengwu's ability to talk to animals, it would definitely make it easier for them to complete this mission. Understanding animal language? Wasn't that a type of innate ability? Was this girl a natural talent? Although they were quite surprised that Fengwu had an innate ability, they weren't too jealous, because the ability to understand the language of animals wasn't a good ability among the innate abilities. Instead, it was a relatively useless ability. Because this ability was of little value to them, of course it wouldn't arouse their jealousy. Yes, Fengwu nodded. Her master had told her that her ability to understand animal language was not a big deal in this world. She did not have to worry about others knowing about it. Therefore this time, she did not hide anything. Fengwu answered honestly. Hearing Fengwu's affirmative answer, everyone was surprised, but they didn't think it was a big deal. After all, it wasn't a big deal. Is there really a plague here? Xindao frowned as he studied the village. Yes, Fengwu nodded again. Are you serious? There's an epidemic here? Let's get out of here. It's too dangerous, even though this is just a tournament dungeon. However, the diseases in this instance dungeon can still cause them to fall sick. Although the febrile disease doesn't have much effect on those who have cultivated combat aura and magic, it's definitely a disease that can cause despair to ordinary people. You're right, Senior Ober. We need to leave this place as soon as possible. Because of Fengwu's natural talent, no one suspected that she was lying. After all, such a lie would not benefit her in any way. Fengwu, ask it which way we can leave this place, Ober said to Fengwu. Fengwu asked the little mouse this question. The little mouse immediately answered, but, you want to leave this place? The little mouse sounded very worried. Yes, Fengwu said to the little mouse. The way out of this village has been sealed by the mayor. If you want to leave, you can only leave through the forest in the east. But there are many monsters in the forest. If you go in, you may not be able to come out alive. The little mouse thought of the villagers who tried to escape through the forest in the east. None of them came back alive. They were probably all dead in the forest. Fengwu told everyone what the little mouse said. No one thought that there was a mayor in this dungeon, and the mayor had sealed the way out. Of course, they would not completely believe the words of a little mouse. So they sent people to look for a way out. But when they came back, they said that there was a powerful seal around them. There was no way out. Fengwu's team had no choice but to go through the forest in the east. The dangerous forest that the little mouse said was the only way out of the village. At this time, the images of each team were perfectly displayed on the screen. Because all the contestants did not land at the same place. Some fell directly from the sky into the trees, and some fell into the water or the nest of a powerful monster. The landing point was actually very important. If you were unlucky, it was very likely that you would be killed by a magical beast before you could even see your surroundings clearly. Fengwu and the others were not very lucky when they landed in a fever-affected village. However, they were much luckier than the others who landed in the same village as them, because they discovered the truth of the village at the first moment and left the landing point as quickly as possible. Vice President, I want to ask, is there anything different about this village? I saw you smile when you found out that a team was planning to go into the house to collect the loot. Is there some kind of trap waiting for these contestants? Tamancha was very observant. When she found the vice president's expression was not right, she immediately pointed at the image on the screen and asked. Actually, this village is also a test for the contestants. As long as the contestants enter the houses of the villagers and stay in the village for an hour, they will immediately be infected by the epidemic. The epidemic is very contagious. As long as one of the team members is infected, The other team members will be infected if they stay in the house for more than half an hour without knowing. Chapter 432. Unless they can find a cure for the epidemic disease in the dungeon, otherwise, they will be afflicted with a state of continuous loss of HP and weakness. If they can't find a cure before their HP is depleted, they will die due to the continuous loss of HP and weakness, and be eliminated from the competition. The vice principal stroked his white beard, and said with a radiant smile, "Are you serious? That's too much. At the very least, they should hang a sign in the village. Otherwise, who would know that there are people in that village who have the epidemic disease?" Many of the students who heard the vice president's explanation started to discuss in whispers. "That's right. That's too difficult." "Vice President, did you hear that? Some of the students are saying that they should hang a sign in the village. Otherwise, it will be too difficult. After all, no one knows anything about the situation in the village. Don't you think it's unfair to our contestants to release the epidemic virus?" Tamancha sat on the stage and smiled charmingly. "There won't be any unfairness. Because in every village, the main god has already released some information about the village. Once the contestants enter the village, they will be tested on their observation skills and perception of danger. If they are not observant enough, they will not be able to discover the information left behind by the main god. Then they will be eliminated. We've already made it clear before the start of the competition that this is a survival challenge. The one who survives to the end is the winner. If you want to survive in that kind of environment, you can't just rely on luck. We're mainly looking at your overall ability," the vice president said with a smile. He did not feel pressured at all. "I see. Thank you, Vice President, for your explanation. Next, we will continue to watch the competition. Oh, there are already teams that have left the village. Don't they want to look around the village to see if there are any school badges?" Tamancha was talking about Feng Wu and the others. In the image, they had just come out of the village and were walking toward the eastern forest. The eastern forest was a very strange place. It was because there were all kinds of strange things growing in the forest. There were also some fruits that had never been seen before. "They have entered the forest. Vice President, are there any traps in this forest as well?" Tamancha asked with interest. "This forest is actually a large labyrinth. We've already asked the Lord God to cast many illusions in this labyrinth. Now that the contestants have become ordinary people, it will be very difficult for them to walk out of this huge labyrinth. In order to prevent the contestants from getting food too easily, 80% of the plants in the forest are poisonous. The food they have is only enough for them to survive for 3 days. After 3 days, they will have to distinguish which plants are edible and which are not. It is a very difficult choice. Many of the plants we've asked the Lord God to choose are species that have gone extinct in ancient times, or they're plants that the Lord God created according to his own ideas. They don't exist in reality at all. This will be a huge hindrance to the contestants in finding food. Wow, that's insane. 80% of unknown poisonous plants. In other words, there is an 80% chance that they will all be poisoned to death in the forest. The vice principal is too much. I think it's already very difficult to find some uncommon plants in that forest. Even pharmacists can't memorize the entire plant encyclopedia. Even they have to flip through the book when they need it. That's right, the vice principal is too much. I think it's already very difficult to find some uncommon plants in that forest. Now the contestants have to choose which of the extinct plants are poisonous, which are not, and which don't exist at all. Does he have to be so insane? The students below the stage started a heated discussion about how insane the vice president was. Tamancha looked at the calm vice president. "Don't speak anymore, poor children. Don't you know how vengeful your vice president is? If you continue speaking, the vice president will punish you." Even the teachers who were watching by the side cast a few pitiful gazes at the young people who were still in the middle of the discussion. "Little fellows, you are indeed too young. Don't you know that you can't speak ill of the vice president in front of him?" At this moment, Feng Wu and the others still didn't know what was waiting for them in the forest. Feng Wu and the others walked into the insane forest. After entering the forest, they quickly discovered a problem. These plants are so strange. I have never seen them before. And Ma, can you tell what kind of plants these are? Asked the only fifth-year student, Ober, who was also their team leader. These. And Ma walked in front and carefully observed. In front of her were rows of colorful plants. The colors were very bright and beautiful. These beautiful plants were very unfamiliar to them. They were all species that they had never seen before. These seem to be plants that have gone extinct in ancient times. Everyone, be careful. These plants are highly poisonous. Don't touch them. And Ma said seriously, highly poisonous. Upon hearing that they were poisonous, the girls who wanted to pluck some of these beautiful plants to take a look immediately stood further away. Even the boys took a few steps back. After all, who didn't want to come into contact with poisonous plants? Everyone be careful. This place is too strange. There are many plants that even I don't recognize. Don't touch them. And Ma frowned as she looked at the plants that she had never seen before. Even you don't recognize them? Senior Anma, you're a genius of the fourth-year pharmacist department. How come even you don't recognize these plants? Kemi's eyes widened in disbelief as she spoke. That's right, and Ma. Even you don't recognize these? Ober looked at the plants that he didn't recognize and began to worry. If even and Ma didn't recognize these plants, what would they do when the food ran out in 3 days? This was a serious problem that most people had not thought of. Only Anma and Ober had thought of it. And Ma shook her head heavily. As a fourth-year pharmacist genius, she was confident that she could even memorize the complete encyclopedia of medicinal herbs. However, she didn't recognize many of the plants here. She suspected that these plants were most likely extinct and were rarely recorded in the books. This made their competition even more difficult. If they couldn't find food in 3 days, they would most likely starve to death in this place or eat the wrong poisonous plant and be poisoned to death. However, they didn't want to starve to death or be poisoned to death. Chapter 433. The issue of food had become a huge problem for everyone in Fengwu's team. Fortunately, they still had 3 days to find food. The team members began to look for a way out of the forest. Originally, no one thought that leaving the forest would be a difficult task. However, after walking for 5 hours and realizing that there was no change in the surrounding environment, no one thought so anymore. Fengwu quietly listened to the sound in the wind. Look, these guys are back. The Lord God is indeed the best. These guys didn't even know that they had entered the Lord God's maze, said a mangrove tree with red fruits proudly. I knew that these fish-lipped humans wouldn't be able to get out, said a big tree with purple fruits. The Lord God is mighty and domineering. The Lord God is indeed the best. Let these fish-lipped humans wander around here for the rest of their lives. A bunch of flowers, plants, and fruit trees were gloating over their misfortune. These little guys were all very interested in the humans who had just entered the forest. Ever since they were moved here by the Lord God, they had never seen any humans. Now that they finally saw traces of humans, of course, they were happy. In the ethereal realm, other than some small monsters that constantly respawned in the wild, boss-level monsters and some plants, most of them had self-consciousness. In the ethereal realm, there was a set of rules. The excited words of these little guys entered Fengwu's ears without missing a word. She curiously looked at these little guys a few times. She felt that they were very cute. When she was in the tomb of the sea god, Fengwu had seen many plants. However, those little guys did not have self-consciousness. When she saw plants with self-consciousness, Fengwu felt very close to them. We're back again. D**M*, what's going on? I think we might have fallen into some kind of formation. If we don't find a way out quickly, all of us will die here. The others had the same feeling. There were poisonous plants everywhere. Moreover, they had fallen into a formation. If they could not find a way out and solve the problem of food, all of them would be in great danger. As time passed and they were still trapped in this place, everyone started to feel a little impatient. Everyone found a place to sit down and eat their own rations. They didn't bring a lot of rations, so they only ate their own portion. Because they couldn't find the source of the food, they could only leave as much as possible. This way, they could ensure that there would be a certain amount of food to eat 3 days later. Fengwu's team was not the only one who had fallen into such a crisis. Many other teams had fallen into the traps that the school had prepared for them for one reason or another. These traps were very interesting and unexpected. If they were not careful, they might be eliminated. In a short period of time, some unlucky ones had already been eliminated. According to the rules of the team competition, only when everyone in the team cleared the stage together would the challenge be considered complete. If not, even if one person was eliminated, the entire team would be eliminated. After Jane had something to eat, the team set off again. It was already afternoon. They had to find a way to leave before nightfall because the danger at night might be much greater than during the day. Therefore, at night, the team members did not plan to continue on their journey. Instead, they wanted to find a relatively safe place to rest before nightfall. After walking for another hour, they still couldn't get out. After an hour of observation, Fengwu also wanted to ask the plants for directions, but it was useless. The task they received from the Lord God was to trap the humans who entered this place. Even if Fengwu made them feel very close to her, they would not disobey the Lord God's orders. After all, in this world, the Lord God was the ruler. If they did not disobey the Lord God's orders, these plants could still provide some help to Fengwu. However, Fengwu wanted them to tell her the way out. This was completely against the Lord God's wishes. Therefore, although these plants wanted to help Fengwu, they still rejected her request. Unable to find a way out, Fengwu was a little disheartened. However, she was not angry at these plants for rejecting her. To Fengwu, these plants were very cute. Even if she was rejected, she would not be angry. The sky soon darkened. Fengwu and the others found a place to build a fire. They wanted to make do for the night. Fengwu took out the tent she had chosen, and then quickly set it up. There was everything in the tent. There were pillows and a quilt. It should be very warm to sleep in. There was a chill in the night air. In the past, they had the protection of Doqi and magic. No matter how cold the wind was, they could still use magic and Doqi to create a protective shield to keep the wind outside. But now, everyone had become ordinary people. When the cold night wind blew on their bodies, they could only try to pull their clothes up a little higher and move their bodies closer to the fire. When the other 9 saw Fengwu take out the tent, they all looked at Fengwu with envy. When they had first started to choose their belongings for the competition, they had all thought that the tent would not be of much use. But when night fell, they realized that the tent was very useful. At the very least, it could keep their bodies warm. Fengwu, it's too cold. Why don't we girls squeeze in together? Kemi jumped to Fengwu's side and said coquettishly. Kemi was born with a beautiful and cute face. She was also a student of the mage department. Because of her talent in magic, she had been spoiled by her family. Although she looked like she was discussing with Fengwu, she had already determined that Fengwu would not dare to refuse. They only had 4 girls in total. What right did Fengwu have to monopolize such a tent by herself? When Kemi was like this, she completely did not think that she had chosen these items. What did it have to do with monopolizing something that others had chosen? Kemi, forget it. Don't make things difficult for Junior Fengwu. This tent can only fit 3 people at most. We have 4 girls. How can it fit? Sandy was also very jealous of that tent. But she also knew that it could not fit 4 people. At most, it could only fit 3 people. Kemi said unconcernedly. So what? Fengwu is from the Swordmaster department. Her body must be very good. Me and the other 2 seniors are not students of the Swordmaster department. Our bodies are a little weak. Since we are a team, Fengwu shouldn't mind giving up the tent to us. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.